Okay, now don't be mad.
You're listening to the RPM Podcast.
It's not good.
And here we are again, the RPM Podcast, episode 172, May 4th, 2020 at 7:10 p.m. I'm Scott Riggleman down at the Edge of Divorce Motorsports Studio in Manchester, New Jersey. My brother Tim Riggleman is up in Farmingdale, New Jersey. Hey, Tim, how are you?
I'm good, ready to go. Can't wait.
All right, and we have Josh and Matthews down in his Matthews family studio down in Waretown, New Jersey. Hey, Josh, how you been?
Not too bad. I had some nacho cheese on my lap before, but, I took care of that with a chip, scraped it right up, and, it still tasted fine.
That might be a good way to catch the coronavirus, Josh. I'm not sure, though. You might want to throw that little bit of nacho cheese out.
I mean, I do have to be cautious and all, but at the same time, I'm also looking at it like, I already had cancer. I mean, what do I have to worry about?
There's really no local racing going on around here, unfortunately, still. It's been going on a long time. So we're going to continue with our local racing legend series. And tonight, ironically, it's episode 172, and we have the driver of the blue modified back in the day, number 72, Mr. Doug Wolcott. Hey, Doug, how are you?
I'm doing good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're glad you're here too. We're going to talk pretty much all about your racing history, how you got involved, and right up until what you're doing today. But I always like to start out with, how did you pick out that blue paint scheme and the number 72?
The blue paint scheme was a work in progress. We actually started out burgundy, and then we were black and silver, and then as I started to get our own cars, because we were buying other people's cars in the beginning, we had my uncle's. And then we had Glenn Cummins. We bought the second car from. They were all, similar to what they were originally. So then when we built their third car, our own, then we started painting them blue. And it's just blue was my favorite color. And then the 72 was my dad's number. And I had taken that into motocross because I started racing motocross at 14. And that was my number in motocross, and I just brought it back into, when I started racing modifieds.
You said you painted the car blue because it was your favorite color. Was there a certain blue that you used? Was there like a part number or anything like that, or was it basically
light grabber blue?
What was it?
Grabber blue. Light grabber blue was the
grabber blue.
Yeah, grabber. It was similar to petty blue, maybe just a little darker originally, and then we made it a little darker as a couple years went by, maybe 2 or 3 shades. But just we tried a bunch of different things, just and how you feel that year. Or, maybe you had a bad year of racing and you're just looking for some kind of voodoo magic to give you some luck the next year coming up. So we've changed a few things. We weren't always blue. I switched it around a little bit. I've changed it from just blue and white to red, white, and blue to red and white and a few other things. So, but yeah, it progressed through the years.
Yeah, you just mentioned the name Glenn Cummins. I remember Glenn Cummins. Was one of the cars you bought from him, was it that white and yellow number 47 that he had?
Yeah, as a matter of fact.
What chassis was that?
Well, it was actually when he had switched it over. No, I don't think it was the white, it was black and silver. 47, and then we bought it and we just took the numbers off and put 72 on it. So
was that a home built chassis, or was that like a
Treadways? It was a Treadway,
car. Yeah, we talked about Treadway cars with Dave Michael. Treadway was pretty much famous for building super speedway modifieds. Was that an old super speedway modified?
I didn't have the history on it, but I will tell you this: it came with a manual Peugeot rack. And I don't know if anybody knows much about manual steering and a wide tire modified. And this is going back to when we had true 15-inch modified tires and rims and huge offset right side rims. It was a bear to steer.
Was that the manual steering box was out of a Peugeot, you said?
It was a Peugeot rack, yeah.
A Peugeot rack?
Yeah, so it was pretty... as long as it handled good, you're fine. As we just had to steer around there and do your times, you're good. But if you got in trouble, it didn't like steering back to the right in a hurry. With your caster built into it and a manual rack, it was a handful. So you had to have some muscle to get it around.
And it's funny you bring that up because I listened to an interview with Jeff Bodine, and he's kind of famous for bringing power steering down into the Cup level. Down south, when he moved down south, he brought a power steering down. Everybody's like, "Oh, the big advantage there was the power steering." He wanted to get wore out in a 500-mile race. He said, more importantly, the power steering helped him put more caster into the car. It was easier to steer.
Yep.
He always said that really helped him. With the power steering, he could run more caster, where if you had the manual steering, it would get real tough to turn with a lot of caster in the car. Treadway is a name we keep hearing when we bring you old modified guys in and talk about it. I wonder how that guy picked out a Peugeot rack to put in.
I have no idea. It kind of blew us away because we didn't know a lot back then.
Yeah.
So we just assumed it had a steering box like most of the cars out there.
Uh-huh.
And we were just being a little bit excited to have a better upgraded car, because the car I started was with my uncle. It was his car, and it was a Tobias dirt car where you sit up, on top of the transmission, the shifters between your legs.
Basically a dirt car.
Yeah, basically a dirt car made for asphalt. It had A-frames and such, but it was, and it handled pretty decent, but it just was, I'm 6'4", and you try to fit me into those small packages sometimes it was really tough. So my dad at the time, he was, really pushing hard to do this. He's the one who talked me into doing this, because like I told you that I started off in motocross and didn't start till I was 20 driving modifieds.
Yeah, well, we had Doug French on, and he had a similar story too. He raced motocross before he moved to modifieds. Did you ever race motocross with Doug French?
No, I didn't. He was always a few years ahead of me. So I think he was out into racing cars when I got into motocross, or somewhere around that time. And then by the time I got to sportsman, he was already up to modifieds. And we ran a couple years of modifieds together, but then he was off to, bigger and better things. So.
Just one last question about the Treadway, because Dave Michael brought up Treadway quite a bit, and we kind of quite figure out where Treadway was from. I always thought he was from Virginia, but Dave thought he was from the North Carolina area. Do you know where he was from?
No, I really don't. Like I said, I didn't pay much attention to any of that stuff until a little bit later on in my career, when I started to.
Or you just did what you wanted with it. You never called him for setups or anything like that.
No.
Yeah.
No, we were pretty independent. Everything from the time I started till the time I finished, everything we did in-house, meaning and I went out a little bit. Jamie helped me a little bit over the years. I actually, back with that Treadway car, Ray Everham set it up a couple times for me. But, you do whatever you can to learn a little bit here and a little bit there over the years. There's a big history of those things.
Yeah. All right, you mentioned, from the very beginning, you pretty much did your own thing. Who got started in racing in your family? Was it your father, your grandfather, or were you the first one to go racing?
No, my father actually did back in the 50s. He raced in gravel pits. He raced at Wall a little bit in the novice division. Didn't have, much money to work with. So, him and a few of his buddies just threw something together, went out there and had some fun. And then later on, my uncle Art, he drove in the sportsman division. And then a little bit after that, my brother Jeff drove in the sportsman division. And then I joined up a few years later.
Yeah, you brought up Jeff Wolcott. I actually asked Jeff Gravatt. I wasn't sure if that was your cousin or your brother. You said that was your brother?
Yes, that's my brother.
And he drove a red number 26, right?
Correct.
Do you have any idea how he picked that number?
I'm not sure if it was him or he was in partners with Jimmy Hageman.
Oh yeah, sure.
And those two, right? Those two owned that car together and worked on it together. So I would guess it's more Jimmy's number, because when Jeff was running on his own, he had a coupe body car, and it was number 85. So.
Okay. So you switched to 26 when you started racing with Jim.
Yeah. And my brother got hurt in that 85 on the front stretch, got T-boned right on the front stretch there. And he was in a full body cast for quite a few months.
Oh, wow.
At Wall Stadium?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Do you know what year that was?
Pre-80. but I'm going to say 77, 76 or 77.
Was that a home built car, or was that like a?
It was a car he had gotten from Eddie Geibel, but I'm not sure who built it. But it was, back in the day, black iron pipe, and not the kind of welders we have today, and
Fiberglass seat, stuff like that.
Yeah, fiberglass seat, 2 door bars instead of 6, and so on. So it was really, you really had to be a man to drive stuff like that, because they were a bit sketchy.
Stuff like that. You mentioned your dad racing in the gravel pits. Did he race at the gravel pit across the street from Wall Stadium?
I believe so, but he never talked a lot about it. He was pretty reserved when it came to that.
The track in Tom's River that he raced at with his father, and then Dick Barney always talks about a gravel pit track in Lakewood on Hope Chapel Road.
Yeah, my dad never talked much about his racing or anything. So to even know, like I found a picture of his, or I think my sister gave it to me years later, of a car he had, and it's in front of the sportsman shop in Neptune City. The picture's taken at, and heck, I'd never even seen that for probably most first quarter of my life. So
really,
he didn't say much
it's not
about
like
it.
you watched your father race growing up or anything like that. He had stopped.
No,
racing.
he was stopped. I was born in '60, so he was done, and having a family by then, and I was the youngest of 3. So.
Okay. So how did your family get back involved in racing?
We went to Wall throughout my childhood, and not as much as I really wanted to, but from semi-periodically we went, and I got to fall in love with Parker Bones, Flames, and of course Gil Hearn later on became my guy that I would go root for. So just going to the races and being able to listen to them right from our house, even when we didn't go. I remember just being able to pull into the parking lot, and they're already out for practice, and you can hear the noise and you can smell the alcohol burning. Back then they had fuel injection and alcohol. And I mean, it just was an incredible rush for a little kid. Just draws you right in. It's, I think that was the beginning of my race and drug habit. I mean, it was, you're addicted to it from such an early age. And I never knew that I'd ever get to race, but I knew, I really loved it.
Now, you mentioned your uncle Art Wolcott was racing. Did you grow up watching him race?
I did a little bit, and, went to the shop a few times, never worked on his car, but just, hung out, and, I was fairly, I was still in my teens at that point, and, just was interested. Saw him race a few times, but not really as much as I wanted to. And, at that time I was starting to dabble into motocross. So, usually I'm off, traveling somewhere to get ready for a race. So I missed some of that time there. So it's kind of an odd thing for me. I talked to so many people and how they were there every week, and, they worked on stuff right up to the day they started racing. And, I'm an oddity when it comes to that. I loved it, and I always loved it, but it was the back of my mind thing. I had other things going on. And then I just got drawn in from my dad saying, hey, how about we go get your Uncle Art's car and we go racing? It was that, one day I'm racing motocross, and then, within a week later, we're putting a car together to go to Wall. So.
Before we get to you purchasing your Uncle Art's car to go race it, well, back in the day, I mean, when I was growing up, the only place you could really race motocross around here was they did have a track right at New Egypt Speedway. It was called Powerline Park, and there was of course, the motocross track at Englishtown Raceway. I'm just curious, you as a kid growing up in Shark River Hills, in the Neptune, over in Neptune, New Jersey, where did you race motocross at back then?
In Englishtown is where we started. We'd go up there and race. They were pretty much every other weekend, yeah. And I mean, I used to take my dirt bike from Shark River Hills and make it all the way out to Wall. We were always out in those gravel pits right behind Wall, DTA, all the way out to to the general store to get lunch, and all those trails in between, way before 195 came in. Right. I remember when they put it in. Because they put all different hills and stuff, and we used to jump through them. those hills. So yeah, that was all the way back in 74 to 75, 76.
So you did most of your motocross racing at Englishtown?
At Englishtown, yeah. And then I traveled when I got 17, 18. I started going to Sleepy Hollow in Pennsylvania and some places up in New York, Ace MX and a few others. So, but I didn't race. I wasn't super. I did good. I could win or finish top 5, but I was no superstar or anything.
What kind of bike did you have back then? Were they 4-strokes or 2-strokes? Was it like a 125 or a 250?
I had a YZ 400 was my first race bike. 16 years old. I started riding at 14. At 16, I'm on a YZ 400 going to Englishtown. I mean, most people are on 125s or something like that.
Yeah, right.
Back then, nowadays everybody's racing on 50s or 65s. They're starting at 7, 8. 16 going there with a YZ 400. But
was it the old style bikes with the dual shocks in the back and all that stuff?
Single monoshock. It was all the way up through the frame. The original monoshock went all the way through the frame.
Wow.
All right. So from what I gathered, what you just said, you got your first race car off your uncle Art. Is that the first race car you had?
That's correct. Yeah.
Was he done racing then, and you just bought his car from him?
He was done, and actually he just gave it to us to use. And after we were done, we returned it back to him.
So, was that right?
Yeah. So we just took it, did some work on it, tried to make it, a little bit more comfortable for me, being taller, and painted it all up and went racing.
Was it an up-to-date car, or was it a little outdated when you got it?
No, it was a little outdated, but we were able to win in our first year. So obviously still got around pretty good, but I started in the front third or something like that and jumped in the lead and
right down the middle of the track, hold everybody off.
Yeah, whatever.
Whatever it took, right? Back then, were you using Hegeman motors back then, or were you building your own stuff?
Yeah, actually, that's when I met Jimmy. It was 1980. It was when we first got, he had been working a little bit with Jeff, so that was our connection. And he told us go to the junkyard, get this engine here, get that engine there, and bring it here, and then we'll build you a Sportsman motor. Back then there were 318 cubic inch engines, so you could this motor and that motor, and they take the crank out of one, put it in the other, and that that was your 318.
Yeah, we talked to Dave Michael about that because we were talking his family raced a lot in Atlantic City, and I think they had like a 339 rule. I know the Sportsmen at Wall were 318. Then they had a modified division up at Evergreen. They were 320s. So basically, what was a 318? Was that a 305 bored out or a 307? Or how did you get to the 318 cubic inches?
There, I don't remember exactly the combination. I remember there was 2 different engines. I can't remember. It was a 327 and whatever the next one down was. And you take the crank out of one and you put it in the other end, and then you got this, and you took the crank out of that one, and then you got this. But I can't remember the exact.
I always thought that was a crazy.
We're talking 1980s.
Yeah, I know.
For me to remember that far back.
Was a crazy rule, the 318 cubic inches, and I always wondered how they came up with that number and why.
Yeah, it never made any sense to me.
Was that a 2-barrel or 4-barrel or fuel injector?
4-barrel.
4-barrel.
No, it's 4-barrel. Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like back then, they lowered your cubic inch, but they still let you use a 4-barrel. Where nowadays you can run more.
Yeah, 750.
Oh, really? You put a big carburetor on that thing, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like nowadays, you can have the cubic inch, 355 or whatever, but you got to run a 2-barrel, so they kind of do it differently now to slow them down a little bit. When you run, I know when you mentioned Parker Bone earlier, he kind of ran a Sportsman car, but he had to run with the modifieds. When you ran Sportsman, was it just a dedicated class for the Sportsman, or did you have to run?
It was just a dedicated class. You had full-blown modifieds, and then you had just Sportsman support division. And we had, back then we had 24 cars, coming to the track every week. And so you had a full field all the time. You had a race to make sure you get in. 1 or 2 would go home at night. So, Yeah, they had it back in the early '80s. It was a heyday for Wall. I mean, you had every division was at the time was just packed with cars.
I know. I Reed always used to tell me stories. He's like, he couldn't relax. He said basically you went to the track hoping to make the feature. Once you made the feature, everything else was icing on the cake. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I contribute that to because they had less divisions back then. I think they only had 3 divisions. They had like the modified sportsman and like a modern stock division. Now they have like 5 or 6 divisions, so it gets watered down a little bit.
That's true.
Yeah. You mentioned Jim Hageman. I love Jim. He right before he passed away. I wish I would have used his engine sooner in life, but I purchased an old factory stock off of Ted Walters, and it had a Hageman motor in it. And the car sat outside for a while, so I'm like, let me give Jim a call and ask him about the motor. And I got to know him pretty good, and he didn't live far from me. And I bought the motor over to him. We kind of went through it together. What a great guy to work with. He was a lot of fun to work with. Unfortunately, like 2 years after I met him, he passed away.
Right.
When you were dealing with Jim with the engines, was he building? Was that when he was at Ercolino's over in Lakewood?
No, his original shop when I started with him was right down the street from Wall, the opposite side of the highway on 34. And then he moved down to Lakewood. So I forget who the guy that owned that building there.
I know the engine builder in there. His last name was Ercolino.
Oh, okay.
And
he might have rented. He rented his space. It was his. He did his own engines, and I guess he just rented space from him at that time. And then he bought that shop down in Lakewood.
Did you ever work for Jim as an engine builder?
No. I did a lot of engines with him.
A lot of modified drivers actually ended up working with Jim. I know like Kenny Johnson worked over there for a while and stuff like that. And I always thought it was cool that he had people that race cars actually working with him, Yeah,
I worked for my dad most of the time in the machine shop, or later on I started a race car business, and I did front clips and bodies and rear clips, and sold some parts and stuff just to finance my own racing.
Yeah, I remember that was called Wolcott Performance, right?
Correct.
Where did you do that out of?
Right out of the same shop as my dad's. We had that whole back row there on Cindy Lane and Oakhurst. It was almost the whole building we had at one point.
I actually towed over to Cindy Lane. They used to be a sponsor, or so they build Porsches and stuff. What was that, Motion or something like that? Body Motion?
Body Motion.
Yeah, I actually towed Porsches and stuff over there. Was the building close to there?
Yeah, just next building over.
He
actually sponsored, and he was a big help over the years with different stuff. He gave me my first radio set to try, because he had run Porsches on a lot of those big road courses, and you'd have to have these special, almost like a household CB set up for the pits, and then the small radio for the car. So that was my first ever chance to use a radio at the races, which was many years after we're talking. With the coupe and the Pintos and stuff.
That Body Motion place is pretty cool. You can actually go over there, and he has like race cars for sale, like road course cars. Like you'll walk in and it'll be like this Porsche set up for like Laguna Seca or something. It's $54,000. This one's set up for here. It's pretty cool. They sells used race cars over there.
It's funny you mentioned Cindy Lane, because I with the pool company, there's that storage. It was Satellite Self Storage. I think it's like now Life Storage. Was like right next to that. And but it's like a mini industrial park. They got like a Lexus or whatever car dealer thing going on there, or repair facility. They got that welding supply place. Was that no, not Atlas? I forget the name of it. There's an auto body shop. There's
Cindy Lane's pretty cool. It's an industrial park,
but it's like a mini industrial park, because it's like Cindy Lane and then the street that connects to it, and then I think actually just a little bit farther at the end of Cindy Lane, where it was a dead end, they just put a whole bunch of like buildings, like condos or something in.
And I think there's a big BMW dealership there too. I think I took cars there too, BMWs or something, like the Mercedes or something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, that was my tidbit.
On Cindy Lane in your father's machine shop, what did he mostly do work on? Was it like engine blocks and stuff like that, or was he machining other stuff?
No, we did production machining. So one of our big items we did back in the day was we built parts for a kidney dialysis machine for a company called American Medical Products.
Oh, really?
And then Motion Systems I don't know if you've heard of them. The Wolf, Jim Wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah, his brother owned Motion Systems, and we did some work for them. They had built this system for handicap vans, and so the doors would open, electrically, automatically when you push a button, and then if they flipped over, they had these quick disconnects, so people get out or get to the people and help them. So we made a lot of those parts, and from computer parts and different stuff like that, but no engine stuff. And I still get that today because I have a machine shop today, and people call me up all the time. Hey, can you bore this engine out for me? Wrong kind of machine shop.
It is pretty cool when you do own a machine shop, because you just never know what you can really do anything when you're a good machinist. So my uncle's a machinist, and whenever I talk to him, I like to say, "Hey, what's your machine today?" And it could be anything. It could be for something to be built for like a monkey cage to something that's going on the space shuttle. You just never know what he's going to be working on,
Yeah. Yeah, we do from furniture to, top 3 NASCAR divisions to late models to modifieds to overhead cranes. I've got airplane landing gear stuff I'm about to start here probably in a week or two. So
now I'm assuming it's not mass produced. It's more of a specific part or product that you're working on. So how many of a part would you put out? I mean, is it like, 1 to 10, or do you do a couple hundred of a part?
We'd like to do a couple hundred. We do from 10. We do ones. I just don't particularly like them, but we'll do all the way up to thousands. Just it depends on what it is, and beyond that, I don't like doing more than 500. But there's sometimes that we get into, some thousand numbers. We're not quite set up to do the multiple 1,000 deals.
Okay.
Because you're running the machine yourself, so it's CNC, but you still have to feed it.
Yeah.
All the time, so.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
When you had Wolcott Performance, were you like an actual Troyer dealer, or were you just doing things on your own?
Yeah, I was a Troyer dealer for several years, and we were authorized to do the clips and such. So and then we sold cars as well. So yeah, we did just about everything and anything there, but modifies were our main thing. But I built cars for that guy over at Body Motion as well, road race cars.
You mentioned that you had the Tobias car. You mentioned you had a Treadway, and you mentioned that you were a Troyer dealer. When did you own your first Troyer race car and raced it?
1984. Right?
And
1983.
1983. I have you winning your first modified race at Wall Stadium in 1984, May 12th of 1984. You had 16 wins in the modified division over there, and that's pretty good because when you raced, that's when the modified division was ultra tough. And your last win was June 2nd, 2002. The Troyer car you won your first race with, was that a brand new car, or did you buy it used from somebody?
It was a brand new car, and we just bought the chassis and interior sheet metal. And had Charlie McGill, not Charlie McGill, the guys that helped Mauser back in the day. What was
Bill McGill. Bill McGill.
Bill McGill, his dad, Charlie. So it was Charlie McGill, yeah. His dad, Big Bill's dad, put the body on it. And then I remember that first race because it was Pete Britton was leading. Mauser was second, and I was third. And we're, nose to tail, and there was a gap behind us. And we're coming down the front stretch, and Pete blows his motor.
Oh, Jesus.
Spins into the infield off the straightaway, comes across in between 1 and 2, and T-bones the 45, the Mauser. And then I was able to, evasive action around it and take the lead from there. And then that was one of them. And you remember everything about your first win, especially in a modified. It rained that whole night, so we had, pretty green track. And John Blewett Jr. was now second.
Oh, Jesus. You had to hold him off for your first win?
I had to hold him off for my first win. And actually, a lot of people had a hard time with him, but he treated me like gold. I mean, we always hit it off, and I treated him with respect. He treated me with respect. But you heard all the horror stories about all the stuff that did go on if you didn't get along. So
Yeah,
he was always great with me.
Yeah, not always John Jr. You had to deal with Grandpa when you came back up into the pits. Do you know how many laps were left when you had to hold John off? Did you have to hold him off for 5 laps?
Quite a bit. I don't remember exactly 10, 15 or more. It was a fair amount more than I wanted to with John behind me.
Well, they were 35 lappers back then, right? I know they're
correct.
Lappers now.
Yeah, but I mean, as we progressed, we had so many guys. I remember one year we had at least 14 or 15 guys that were capable of winning every night.
Because back in the day, a lot of people don't know this, but Wall Stadium paid very well for a modified feature win, so they got good car counts, real good car counts, and like you said, very good quality cars. I mean, of course, you had the Wolcott cars; they were always prepared very well. You had guys like Everham. You mentioned Tommy Mauser with Big Bill's help. He always had top-notch race cars. Then you had the Truexes, Gil Hearn, Charlie Kramer. I mean, the Ciscone and Dick Barney's cars. I mean, it was tough to win.
Lenny Boyd, Eddie Bone, Harry. I mean,
Tony Hirschman.
Yeah, Hirschman raced there. I mean, even had even a guy like Ed Lilly with a home built car, he could start up front and win too.
Yeah.
It was very tough over there. Good racing back then. It was real good racing back then. When you bought that Troyer chassis with the interior changes, it's out of curiosity. Do you remember what it cost back then to buy something like that?
$3,500.
Oh, really? It was that much back then, huh?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think something like that goes for now? Like 10 grand, you think?
At least
10 grand?
Yeah.
Did you go up to Rochester, New York and pick it up?
I did.
Did you just slide it in the back of a pickup truck like everybody else with the tailgate?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
The first
made many a trip up there
for a little while, and the first time they had me run a Troyer chassis up, I came into work and they just had a chassis slid in the back of the pickup with the tailgate down and one ratchet strap around it. I'm like, "This is how you guys transport cars up to Troyers?" And they're like, "Yeah." And then I learned everybody else did it the same way.
Yeah.
They fit right in the back of a 8-foot bed with the tailgate down. Do you remember your first trip up to Troyers? Is that when you became a dealer?
So Dick Barney was actually the one that really pushed that. He actually called up Maynard and told Maynard, what he knew about me. And they had a relationship racing through the years. And I fly up there to Rochester, and Maynard's girlfriend at the time came to the airport, picked me up, and drove me over. And of course, I'm trying to impress. I show up in my 3-piece suit and all that. I didn't know any better, so I'm just trying to make sure he knows I was serious.
Uh-huh.
And he was as nice as could be. I mean, and he said, "Well, Dick Barney called and he told me that he's seen your work. He knows what you can do. He says you work in a machine shop. He says you'll probably hold a tolerance as well more than most of us do now." He said, "So, we're looking forward to working together." And I just was in shock that it was that easy for one. And of course, Dick was the big, pushing point that made it that easy.
So was that part of the deal that for you to become a dealer, you had to buy a Troyer chassis, or you just wanted to buy a Troyer chassis and you got the dealership with it?
No, that was really just the smart move. I mean, how do you sell cars that you're not driving? So, and then you look at Jamie's, was winning races in a Troyer car, and Gil's winning races in a Troyer car. Why, at that point, you do what everybody else that's doing better than you, just to try to catch up at first. Here I'm young to the modified division, and it's even though when I left the Sportsman and I was dominating, and I won that championship in '82. When I went to modifieds, now all of a sudden, even the guys that are just okay were tough.
Right.
So it's like a giant leap. It's like going from the truck series into Cup. It's a giant leap to get there. And then these guys didn't play around. I mean, Harry, had been racing there for years. And at that time, he didn't have a very good program, but he was as tough as nails to pass. I mean, he'd fight you and fight you and fight you. And then once you got by him, then you were gone. But boy, it was a handful. So that was just that first year was a learning experience of just the intensity level I had to be at to be competitive.
All right, so you race modifieds at Wall Stadium for a while, and then I think it was in 1991. Do you remember the modifieds going on strike and pretty much leaving Wall Stadium to go to Flemington?
I do. That was painful times.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about what went down there and what happened there? Dave Michael didn't really remember. I remember you guys, not saying you personally, but the modified division themselves. I could have swore they showed up one day and refused to race, and they wanted more money. And then Jenny.
No, that's not how it went down. We had been talking as a group because at that point it's getting more expensive, and the purses hadn't grown in a while. And I think it wasn't just a couple of people; it was the whole group of modifieds from top to bottom. And we went to a restaurant. We had the back room. As a matter of fact, I think it might have been the cabin. And we're all sitting there talking. And, I stood up in front of everybody because I was part of this leadership group in that situation, along with, Harry and Dick and a few others. And I said to them, guys, because they're all dead set against going back without a raise. And I told them flat out, I said, if we don't do some compromise here, we may never race here again. Are you sure you want to do that? And it was unanimous at that meeting. So it wasn't at the track deal, but it was, in this room, back room, cabin, party room, whatever it was. And then we brought it to Jenny and said, we need this or we can't come back. And she says, sorry, nice knowing you.
Do you remember how much you guys were asking for? How much more? Do you remember how much a feature win paid back then? Was it like $1,200 or $1,500?
It was probably $1,400 at the time, and I think we wanted $2,000.
So you weren't asking for like double purse or anything. You're just asking for a little bit of an increase.
Yeah, we hadn't seen an increase for as long as I had been there that I can remember. Maybe if it was very small. They were just looking for an increase across the board because the tires bill just is ridiculous. It's just every week, or every year, if you're trying to run up front. I mean, and again, my team was, we didn't look low buck when we hit the racetrack, but I mean, I was one of the last guys to have an open trailer. I go to the racetrack. I didn't have any more than gas money for my car, and just rolled the dice on buying 4 tires and going out there and hope I made enough to pay. And some nights I didn't. So. These things just, go through your mind, and you're like, okay, how am I going to continue to do this? So for me, that was my thought process. And I think it was for a lot of guys that were just trying to, not everybody had, the money that, Truex had or Durkin had or whichever. So we're just working people. You make X amount of dollars a year and you take whatever you could out of your household and put it into your race car. And then you go try to beat the guys like Truex who had pretty darn good money, or Durkin, or even Dick Barney had his fair amount of money to deal with over the years. So
I'm just curious how you presented this to Jenny Nichol. A lot of people remember Jenny Nichol as being a pretty strict business person, and she was pretty tough to deal with. Did you call her and ask her for a meeting, or did you actually just show up at the office one day?
I think we called and asked for it. I don't think I was involved with that meeting. I think Harry and Dick actually took care of it. But the times I did deal with her a little bit, she wasn't nasty. She was just matter of fact. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do. And she would tell you her opinion on it because, I did Central Jersey Speedway, New Egypt.
We're getting to that. That's on my list.
I didn't mean to jump around, but I had to deal with her a little bit there. That's the only reason I mentioned that. It's because she was pretty just matter of fact. This is how I see it. This is what I think you're doing wrong, and this is what I'm going to do. And if you don't like it, tough.
Yeah. 1991. I remember because it's the year I graduated high school, and I also remember that was pretty much the time. I think Flemington was getting ready to pave the track. Did that have anything to do with the modifieds? Maybe asking for more money because they kind of had like a backup plan where they can take their cars and go race Flemington?
I think that was the main thing. They had a backup plan. everybody felt secure. Well, if we don't get it here, they're willing to pay us $2,000, and that's where I think we got that, payout from.
Right.
And you'd be surprised, the majority of the people that were wanting the more money wasn't the top 5 or 6 or 8 cars. It was beyond that. It was those guys that were really pushing for more money because they weren't seeing the feature win money or top 5 money.
Right.
So they were just struggling to get to the track just to compete, much less try to win.
Another thing I remember about that whole thing, slowly one by one, most of the modified guys did come back to the 2-barrel division at Wall Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like Harry and even Dick Barney ended up finally putting the 2-barrel modified together to go run Wall. It was just weird, like, slowly but surely the cars came back. So kind of in the end, like, Jenny
she won, yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, say bluntly, she won in the end. You didn't. I raced here. I thought this was the coolest thing ever when a group of you, I remember, I think it was 4 people in the group. I know Kevin Ayers was involved. You were involved. Bob Jeffers was involved. You guys took over New Egypt Speedway and renamed it Central Jersey Speedway. Can you tell us a little bit about that, or of you running a racetrack?
Yeah, it was something I thought would be really cool. And it wasn't. It was a lot of hard work. It was a lot to overcome, and you're trying to race against Wall, which had its history, and New Egypt had its history in it, but not in a good way. There's a lot of bad feelings for people because of getting paid issues and stuff like that. I mean, you'd race there. I raced there many a Friday night, and after the race, you'd run to the trailer to make sure you got first in line to get a check that night.
Yeah, my dad remembers that too. My dad raced monorsocks there. He said the biggest race of the night was running up to the pay window because you would actually get a check and you would just sign the check over and try to cash it back right at the racetrack. You wouldn't even want to bring it to the bank.
Yeah, because if they ran out of money, there's a good chance you may never get it. So yeah, we had those things to deal with, and I think we might have tried a little too hard to make a complete break from them. And spent a lot of money, painting and redoing everything. I mean, I think every one of us at one point got poison oak, from cleaning every bush and
me and Tim
out of
poison ivy helping there too, because I remember you guys had like a cleanup day where you invited like anybody to come help.
Yes.
And I remember my parents driving us out there, and me and Tim would help you guys clean up and stuff, like pulling weeds and stuff like that, because the place was pretty weeded up. I'm good friends with Kevin Ayers, and I know he's like a neat freak. He's got everything in his garage is spotless. His house is spotless. His place of work is spotless. So I knew when he got that racetrack, it was going to be spotless. And you guys did a great job fixing that place up. But you think you went a little too far, like with the spending to fix it up? Well,
I think we did, only because we got so short that as things got tougher, it became harder to pay, because we're getting, our best nights were the week after a rain out, because more people were in the grandstands and buying the food. My mom actually in the beginning, and I wasn't there the whole time. I only stayed maybe half a season, and then I had to bail.
You're like, enough of this.
I couldn't deal with where we were heading. So yeah, my mom did the kitchen stuff. She cooked all the food and, meatballs and sausage and all that stuff. So we were killing it on food, but we're only getting 300 to 400 people in the grandstand. And we weren't getting good car counts, so it was costing us to be there. So if we got a rain out, the next week we might get 600 in the stands, and you had to, do the tickets that were there. They came in for free, but the extra people came that next week, and then the food made up. And now we made a couple $100. So it was a tough deal. And we had started off pretty good because we had Budweiser money for the mud hops and everything. And we did monster trucks and stuff, but it just was very much tougher than I could ever imagine, especially dealing with racers that you knew. I mean, they come to you and tell you, this is, you guys got to enforce the rule. You've got to do this. You can't be like every other track. So you enforce the rule, but it's on them. And then they're mad at you and they never come back.
Kevin always told me,
this is exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah. Kevin always tells me a funny story. One time he had to throw out Bobby Thomas, and Bobby Thomas is one of his very best friends. And he let Bobby Thomas lock the pit gate after he was done hanging out all night after the races. He said one time he had to walk up to Bobby Thomas and said, by the way, you're thrown out for 2 weeks and make sure you lock the gate when you leave tonight. Kevin always used to say too, one of the things that really helped him financially was when he started racing the go-karts there. He said the go-kart money really helped him going for a little bit. He said because a lot of people would come and you pay to race go-karts, but there was no payout to pay back. So that was all
Right.
that little bit of money always seemed to help a little bit. He said another thing that really helped him too was Bob Jeffers was one of the partners, and that guy could fix everything. Like if the septic tank broke, he knew how to, he had a backhoe, he had the equipment to do it. But Kevin always told me the 10 months he ran that racetrack, he learned more in those 10 months than he did 4 years at college. He said that really learn how to deal with people and how to deal with people in the good way and the bad way. I always loved that name, Central Jersey Speedway. Do you know who thought that up?
The three of us, we were just coming up with a bunch of things and writing stuff down. And, I don't remember who exactly, if it was one of us or all of us, but, we just collaborated and came up with a name, come up with the logo. We painted up everything so it just looked nicer. So it's just everything we did as, together. And that was,
Do you remember what year that was?
Not without looking it up. I don't know.
But you were a full blown modified guy, and I remember you guys did have a few big modified races, but wasn't your main division then like the 2-barrel Mad division back then?
Yes, yeah, that was the premier for us. That we had those, and I think we had street stocks.
Oh yeah,
and
it was good racing there. It really was. You had the Pro 4 modifieds and stuff like that.
You had to race a Champions qualifier though for the tour cars, didn't you? I think Eddie Bone ended up winning because I was there with John Jr. He led most of the race, and Eddie passed him with 2 to go.
I'd be lying to you if I told you I knew, because as I get older, you start forgetting stuff. So.
I know the Mad division was your premier division, but I think Tim is right. I think he did have a couple of big modified races because I remember seeing a flyer and advertised guys like Baldwin and like Bob Park and stuff like that coming. So I think you guys ended up having a big modified race at one time there. Unfortunately, when you guys got the track, the asphalt wasn't in that great a shape either. I remember the asphalt coming up at times, and you having problems with that too. So yeah, you guys were battling a lot.
Yeah, it was one thing after another. I mean, septic systems, and even though somebody has a backhoe, we still had to buy the stuff that goes in there and redo the whole system. So it's just, and then we created a bigger pits in the back and all that crushed gravel. And then, you need bulldozers and rollers and everything else. So it's just, it just keeps one thing to the next, to the next, to the next.
And to top it all off, you guys didn't even own the property, right? You were renting it.
Right.
Yeah. So you're putting money into a place you don't even own.
But we were lucky in a sense that we were able to get some good deals, but it was, and we had some good money to start, because we had Budweiser as a sponsor for the mud bogs and the monster truck stuff. So that helped, but I think we just didn't even have big enough pockets to really get into it and weather the storm of restarting.
Right.
Because if you don't have enough car count, it's hard to bring fans in. Your back gate can't carry you. So it's just, you're just fighting that all the time.
Now, was the track for sale at that time? Or
I believe it was, but I don't know. It didn't have signs on it, but I believe he was trying to sell it at that time.
Garback still owned it when you did that?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so you moved from track promoter. I also remember you moving on to the modified tour division. You raced for a great racing family. Me and my brother were fans of this family's racing from the old street stock days at New Egypt Speedway. We used to watch the Keeley brothers. They had a number 48 yellow Camaro. That thing was always a rocket ship. Unfortunately, the father that was driving the car, he passed away at New Egypt Speedway of a heart attack during a race. Tim, if I remember correctly, he won that race that night, didn't he?
I don't remember that.
If I remember correctly, I think he had a heart attack in the race car after he won the street stock race. And then they had drivers like Ronnie Humes drive the car. The car was always top notch, always winning races. And then Scott Davison drove for them for a little while. And then I remember you getting the ride with them and going tour racing. How did that come about?
On a whim, he called me out of the blue. Bobby Keeley just called me, and I had known him over the years and talked to him, just like you do everybody else in the race weekends. And I guess I was doing well enough, racing every week at between there and Evergreen and the races we had at New Egypt early on. This was 1990, so that I raced for them. He just called me out of the blue and asked me if I would be interested in running the tour with them. And they had dabbled in stuff here and there. So it was new to them going to run a tour. And of course, it was new to me because I hadn't seen any of those tracks before other than to watch, meaning not as a driver. So it was a really cool deal. I was so pumped to have the opportunity and to be with a good group. Those guys are hardworking and they just put their hearts and souls into it. And they're the four brothers. Were awesome.
They were out of Brooklyn, New York. They had a big forklift business. They did forklift sales and repairs.
Right.
And I know they kept the race car there for a while. Was it there when you raced for them?
Yeah, there was many times I drove up there and worked on it, set it up. Matter of fact, I borrowed
wasn't it like off the BQE off of 3rd Avenue?
Yeah, underneath the bridge there.
Yeah, the elevation.
Pretty seedy area.
Tough part of town. I drove truck for a living for many years, and I used to deliver copper tubing over that when I used to pass Gillies all the time, and I could see the truck and trailer in the yard there and stuff like that. It's just a weird place to see a race car team.
Yeah.
Did you almost crash then, Scott?
No, I didn't crash then. I'd pay attention.
Scott has a bad habit of looking for race cars while he's driving.
So would you drive out there like once a week to work on the car, or?
In the beginning, I was going up there every week just to get a feel for how they work, and they get a feel for how I am, because we didn't know each other that well. And then I set up a system there and gave them all the notes on how I like stuff set up and what I want the car, what springs I want and what bars I want. And then we talked on the phone, and those guys were well versed. They didn't really need to have me there, but it's just nice. I like working on everything I drive. Makes me feel more confident when I go out, to turn some fast laps. That I just touching it makes me have that more confidence. So, and then after a while, we just once a month I went up there, and towards the end I didn't have to go up there at all. I just call them up, say this is what I'd like to start with, and they just take care of it. Those guys were pretty darn good. I mean, they've been racing for a while, and they were attention to detail was there. So it wasn't like I had to teach them anything. It's just other than what I like to have in a race car, because there was a certain feel that I want, and I don't like certain things, and I just want to feel this, and so this is how I get it, and that's basically what I had to cover with them.
My brother had asked if you ran the whole modified tour with them, or did you finish the season with them? Or?
We didn't get to finish. We ran all the way up through Pocono, and we were just coming on. We just had finished 5th at the Thompson 300 and led for a while. And then Pocono, we were running up in the top 10 all day. And then we got miscommunication on the last pit stop and actually pitted after everybody else. So now I'm dead last, and there's 30 cars here on the track. And I was able to make it all the way back up to 6th, finish 6th that day. And it was over. I mean, I think they expected a little bit more. But I don't know if I felt we were right on track. It just maybe took a little bit longer to get there. There's a lot of processes to learn. When you go to Thompson for the first time, it's hard to be the best. I think we finished 9th or 10th our first time there. And then the next time we got, we're a little bit better. And then we got a 5th in the Thompson 300, which I thought was phenomenal for our first year team. And then we had a few issues. We ran Martinsville, and then in the middle of the Martinsville race, I felt the vibration. We pull off and pull the mains down, and the bearing started to spin. Well, we had a test the next day, so at Richmond, when they had just switched the Richmond track over from the old version to the new, and we never got to go there. So it seemed like there was just a little bit of problems we struggled with, and then we didn't get some finishes sometimes that maybe we should have, maybe some on me, maybe some on our pit stops. And I probably didn't handle all the things the way I should have back then. I'm probably still a little immature and a little bit excitable. I mean, my personality is pretty
Were they using Bob Renault engines?
Atypical. Bob Renault, yeah.
He builds good power.
He does, but like any top engine builder, it's first year with him. He's not going to give you his best stuff, but he's not giving you bad stuff. And then every time we'd bring it back, it was a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And I'm like, man, we're starting to have something here in the middle of this year. And now our qualifying's better. Now our races are better. So yeah, we were really starting to come on. I feel like if we had finished the year out, I didn't get to go to New Hampshire, which I really was upset about because that was the first year for New Hampshire.
It's funny that you say that about Bob, because when John was using Bob engines, he would be like, John's like, is this one good? He's like, it's all right. The next one would come, and he'd be like, Bob, is this one good? He's like, it's okay. And then he's like, Bob, is this one good? He's like, this one's good. And John ended up winning Loudon that year with it. So that's true the way it works.
Well, what engine builders do to protect their stuff, they got to build a little bit of trust with you. They don't want somebody to come and build in their engine and then run it to their engine builder and have them take it apart and see what they're doing. So they kind of protect their best stuff until they trust that you're a quality customer, and then they give you the real good stuff. Yeah,
if I couldn't drive a lick, and he's giving me the best stuff, it just makes him look bad. Right. And then if we take that engine or if it is good and then take it to our guy, then he copies it. So there's a lot of proprietary stuff there they got to watch out for. I never understood it back then as well as I can today. Back then I was like, I just need the best. I don't want to play this pecking order.
You got to say it was a business for them. They're in competition with the other engine builders too,
I think if we could have just went to the next year, we would have had a real opportunity to win some races and finish up front to the points. But you can't predict how things are going to go. It just, I think, just a little bit of change here and there, we would have gone on. And we almost hooked up again several years later, right before they hooked up with Tony Hirschman. Like a year before that, they were getting ready to kick into the tour again. And Bobby had called me and asked me if I'd be interested, and I said I would. And then I hadn't heard from him for a long time, and then they decided to have I think a nephew drove it at Evergreen for a little while, and then the following year they went with Tony, and then of course they won 3 championships, I guess, with Tony.
That wasn't a bad choice.
No. Tony's probably one of the best ones he could have chose for sure.
All right. After you split up with the Keeleys, is that when you moved down south, or did you keep racing on your own up here?
No, I raced on my own for a while, and I struggled with just money. I actually, I think the 92, I didn't race at all. And I ran Mike Carpenter, because he worked for me at the time, in my car in the man division. Mm-hmm. And we had a phenomenal year in that. We won 7 races, every big show in the championship that year. Because people ask me, well, how many races did you win? How many? I said, well, my legacy is a little different than just a race car driver, because I've helped so many people win races as well. So, with Mike and Pete Britton, I helped Pete for a couple of years.
That's what I remember you also being a crew chief for Pete Britton when he drove for Harry, right?
Yeah. We won a bunch of races, and the next year with all the stuff and I was still helping them, but I was back to driving again. But we parked next to each other, so I was with them and doing, giving them ideas for changes and stuff. And he ended up winning the championship that year. Pete did.
I was kind of wondering how that worked out. I know Harry pretty well through my towing business. I tow for his transmission shop up there in Freehold, and I know Harry's pretty set in his ways, and he likes his own ideas. Would he let you do whatever you want on the car, or was he still pretty much in charge?
No, he gave me free reign.
Really?
Him and I went from, and it's the craziest thing because if you really think about it, you don't know how you get here, but we went from fierce adversaries. I don't think we even liked each other. To one conversation when they were struggling at Flemington, I said, I'd like to have a shot, and he said, to drive it. I said, no, to set it up. I think Pete's an excellent driver. I said, but it sounds like you're struggling, and I really think I can make it work. And he gave me the opportunity, and we just became the best of friends. And we've been super tight ever since.
I know Harry, for most of his career, when he drove that 7A, was a raceworks guy. He always drove Flemke cars. When he was at Flemington with Pete, that was a Troyer car, right?
We had a Troyer car and a Spafco.
Oh, you had a Spafco, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Did you like the Spafco cars?
Yeah, it was fine. It ran decent. I don't think Flemington was a funny track because you really had to be a low CG car, center of gravity. And if you didn't get a lot of weight on it and get that CG as low as possible, it was really hard to go fast for a long time. The Troyer cars at that time were pretty heavy. They had made them real wide, cage-wise and everything. You couldn't get a lot of ballast on them, so they were a struggle. The Spafco car was a little bit lighter. But then Dick at the time, he was beating us left and right. And you just look at his cars and it looked like the left front was down and digging and everybody else was rolling over to the right side.
That's when everybody went on a spending spree and everybody bought raceworks cars because Dick Barney was killing them with the raceworks. And that's what I was getting back with Harry. It was kind of weird. All those years at Wall Stadium, the Troyer cars were the best cars I have, and he was racing a raceworks car. He moves over to Flemington. He doesn't have a raceworks anymore. The raceworks car is the hot ticket, and he's there with a Troyer and a Spafco car.
Yep.
Dick Barney also did a lot of body work on those cars too. I remember his bodies got pretty radical, kind of like a DA modified, almost like back in those days. Did you ever get to work on a raceworks chassis at Flemington, or did you stick with the Troyers and the Spafcos?
I've worked on a lot of different stuff for other people, not my own. But the last car I actually ran at Flemington, I built myself. Other than it had a raceworks front clip, and so it had the raceworks geometry. I thought his front suspension was the right setup for any modified. I thought, having those horns on there with the front struts in it was much more stable. It didn't help at Flemington under braking like it did at Wall, because under braking it was much more stable on entry. But at Flemington it was just stronger. If you touch a wheel, you didn't have to worry about it getting, you Troyer ones that are on the backside, they bend immediately as soon as you touch a wheel. Now your caster's messed up, his toes messed up, and you're barely hanging on. Well, with those front struts, you could tap a wheel and keep digging. You might change the toe a 1/16 of an inch, but you were good. So,
did you ever drive a DA car at Flemington?
No, no, I never drove DA car. I built one for Pete, but I never drove them.
I miss Flemington. I wish that track was still there.
I did get to drive a Craftsman truck there.
Did you really?
In testing, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I got questions for that coming up. As a matter of fact, it'll be a good crossover now. Let's move on from your modified days up here as a driver to you moving down south to be a NASCAR crew chief. When did that happen, and why did that happen?
I think the main reason it happened is because I wasn't racing that much anymore, and I was feeling a little bit lost in who I was. My whole life I'd spent driving race cars or working on them, and I wasn't doing either. I'd sold my auto repair business to Law's Oil Company and went to work for them. And I had been there 6 years and just wasn't happy with this big, I wasn't used to working with so many different people and so many different personalities. And it's, all about oil and stuff there, and everything is secondary. And although I was a big piece in that puzzle, I didn't feel, it's not like winning a race. It's not like trying to win a race. It's just you fix a car, you fix an oil truck, you just did your job.
So you were a mechanic for the vehicles for Laws?
Yes.
Okay. When you said you went to work for them, I wasn't sure, because going by the machine shop thing, funny thing about Laws is they still sell coal and dog food and generators.
Yes. and fertilizer
Yeah.
and lawnmowers.
I bought my snowblower there. I thought it was cool. I never knew it until you posted that picture that you redid that old truck that was out there.
Yeah, my dad and I did that one, and Timmy Steffen painted it. Yeah, we've done It's amazing when you think back in your life, and I can't believe that I've gotten as old as I've gotten. But I go back and I look at all the people I've helped in racing, all the things that I've done, like building that truck, or promoting a racetrack, or going down to NASCAR and becoming a crew chief. And in the truck series, I actually crew chief one cup race. It's just kind of amazing, and feel so blessed that I was able to have the life I've had. I mean,
so how did you make the jump down south? Did you just move down there and look for a job, or was a job?
No,
then you
I was
down?
pretty tight with John Ruggiero.
Yeah, I remember John. He was an engine builder.
Yeah, he had built our engines at the time for Mike's car. When Mike drove my car, Frankie Tilton and Frankie owned the motor, I owned the car, and John Ruggiero built the engine. So we got really tight, and he had moved down. He was working for Everham, and we had talked, every few weeks. And I'm just not happy doing what I'm doing, and he's telling me what a great time he's having, and he's enjoying it. He's in the big time, and it just got me thinking. And out of the blue, I called up Tommy Baldwin and said, "Hey, I'm looking to come down there. Do you have anything available?" And there's a bit of a story to it, but end result was I was down there working on the 22 and the 93 Cup cars by August. Yep, Bill Davis Racing.
And that was what Ward Burton and Dave Blaney driving at the time?
Yes. Yeah.
What was your job title then when you first moved down there?
When I first moved down there, I started off in suspension, and then not too long after that, they moved me up into R&D. I ran, I car chiefed Ward's nationwide or Bush car at the time, but did a lot of the R&D. I did all the setups on the stuff, and did all whatever changes they were going to have. I put on the car, did the setup, took it back off, did all the notes, put the next setup, and so on and so on. So then we go to the track like Kentucky or Indy or Daytona or Talladega or wherever we may go, and then I'd have the whole test plan there and just run through each part. And in the beginning, it was Tommy would crew chief it, and Bill Davis was the engine tuner. I took over that whole thing, and I did all the test plan. The crew chiefs might say, "I want to look at this and I want to look at that," and I'd say, "Well, can we look at these things too?" And they say, "Sure." So then I'd do the whole project, and I'd crew chief the R&D session, and then it just progressed from there.
Were you with Bill Davis when they won the Daytona 500 with Ward?
Oh yeah, we all got rings.
Did you really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm good friends with Shannon Connor. We're childhood friends, and he has a championship ring from with Tony Stewart. He actually got burned out working with the NASCAR thing. He was to the point where he would just go to work and like make A-arms all day. Like he'd make the same A-arms all day long.
Yeah.
It just turned into factory work for him.
Right.
He ended up becoming a crew chief, notably on a Craftsman truck team. Was that with Bill Davis also?
Yeah, I was there probably going into my fourth year. They had started running Toyota vehicles, trucks, and I was still over in R&D. And the 23 truck was struggling. The driver, they weren't sure if it's the crew chief or the driver, and they had seen what I could do, and they asked me if I would go from R&D and be the car chief on the 23 and find out what is going on there. Is everything being done right? Is it, and it's kind of a bad position that I felt like I was being put in, because I've got, I'm supposed to report back. Is the crew chief not doing his job? Is the driver? So I just went over there and I went to work, and I just did the very best I can do and didn't badmouth anybody. And
were the trucks teams run out of the same shop as the Cup teams?
Right across the street. When I first came there, they had just finished a brand new building across the street. So they moved to that new building, and then it was the Bush cars were across the street. And then when they faded, because we only had a part-time deal, they moved the truck teams in there. So I ran that first year with the the 23, and then Bill, in his nonchalant way, was walking through the shop, and he goes, "Hey, Doug, come here. You want to crew chief that 22 truck?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, it's yours," and he walks off.
Did you have to tell the crew chief that was crew chief and that you're the crew chief?
No, that was the exact time that Skinner came in as third truck, because we only had two trucks, with the 22 and the 23, and Jeff Hensley was the crew chief the first year on the 22 with Bill Lester, and he went with Skinner, and I went with Bill Lester on the 22.
I know working for Bill Davis got a little tricky because he was a Dodge guy, and he was kind of the first one to get with Toyota, and he kind of lost his factory support from Dodge and crossing over to Toyota. You were there for that whole period?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was there. They went from Pontiac to Dodge, and then Dodge to Toyota in the time frame that I was there. And, they had made some mistakes. They could cost them, a fair amount of money when Dodge had sued them. So they had a pretty good settlement they had to do.
Wow.
Yeah, I know he got sued by Dodge, and also when you first went to Toyota, when Toyota first came in, their power wasn't as good as it is now. Did you guys struggle a little bit with the motors at first there?
I don't think. I think our trucks were pretty decent, but it depended on. There was two different shops that built engines for the trucks. One was out in California, the regular TRD, and then we had our own people building right there, right up the road from our place, and those engines were stout. And it was actually,
wasn't that called like Trinity or something like that?
Triad,
yeah.
So after we got realizing that they had the better motors, they put them into lottery, because there was a bunch of truck teams. So you were hoping you were going to get the Triad one and not the TRD one. And if you got the TRD one, you're disgusted before you even started. They weren't terrible, but they just weren't the same. I mean, I remember going to Kansas Speedway, and we had our truck hooked up pretty strong that day, and Bill Lester was running these people over down the straightaway, and I'm like, yeah, this is what I came down here for.
You mentioned Bill Lester. Before he got to the truck series, what was his racing background?
Road racing.
Oh, he's a road racer?
Yeah.
Was he a Toyota guy? Is that how he ended up in that truck?
He got deals through diversity through NASCAR, and because NASCAR, I guess and I'm not positive this is exactly how it went down, but this is what it was explained to me, whether it's completely correct or not. He was trying to break in, and then Toyota was coming in, and NASCAR pretty much said, we want to put Bill in a truck in a Toyota at Bill Davis, and these are the sponsors. And it was like, any sponsor you see on the side of, there's like a little board on the side of the race hauler for NASCAR every weekend, and you see Checkers, and you see Crown Royal, and you see
basically their contingency sponsors.
All their contingency sponsors was on our trucks.
Right.
So it was a NASCAR pushed program.
Uh-huh.
But Bill actually was a good driver. He just didn't start young. Like, I started late at 20. I don't think he started till almost 30 in real racing, because he's went to Berkeley, and he was off to do a whole different thing. It has nothing to do with racing, and made this left-hand turn right into NASCAR. So he had a lot of ability to go fast, especially on intermediate tracks. He was phenomenal for we could go out and be on the pole or outside pole almost every race. I mean, we got 2 track records and 2 poles 2 weeks in a row between Kansas and Kentucky. Struggled on the short tracks. I mean, I took him to South Boston and stood on the track with him. He's in the truck, and I telling him where to brake, where to not to brake, where to hit the gas, all these things. And I picked him up a half a second just by walking him through. He'd pull him up and just park him there and tell him exactly what to do here, and pull him up to here, and so on and so forth. And that really helped him. But he just didn't have, like, the rest of us did, where we're short track racing every weekend.
Me as a kid up here in New Jersey and watching all you guys race, and I watched a lot of you move down south, and I always wondered, like a guy like you or Ray Everham or a guy like John Ruggiero, I mean, Randy Goss moved down there, Satch and Berge all moved down there.
Kenny
Bruce
Johnson.
Cook, Bruce Cook moved down there.
Yep.
I was just always wondering, a lot of you guys were drivers and you moved down south, and now you're watching other people drive the cars or trucks. I always asked Bruce this too, and he said he never did it. I just always wondered if you guys ever got a chance to jump in the car at a test session or a truck at a test session, at least get a couple laps in.
No, because you're on a plan usually. There's no time for playing around. I mean, you'd be amazed at how many hours we put in just to get done, get to the track and then get through your test plan. We're usually using up every minute and then some. So there was never any time for that. And, it's, how do you go to Bill Davis and say, hey, I want to take your $200,000 truck out and take a few laps. Do you mind?
Yeah. Well, because you were just saying how you're standing on the edge of a track at a test session, but Bill Lesnar saying, here, brake here, get on the gas here.
Right.
You say, hey, let me jump in it real quick. You watch me on the track and then get back in it. You know what I'm saying?
And then the other part is, if I ever got the taste of it, it would have been driving me crazy not to be able to do it. This, without getting into it, I never had that draw to it. And I could be happy being a crew chief and watching my guys, drive it. And then I got a lot of pleasure in that, just like I did. I mean, this is something I've done, from the beginning with all the guys I helped in the man division. It's just a carry on for me. I mean, Jensen and Lippitt and helping Britton and Carpenter and, all those guys, Sam Russo. I mean, I helped all those guys win races or championships, and this is just a continuation, just on a higher scale.
It's funny you just brought up J.J. Jensen's name. I called Butler Seats one day to buy leg supports for a seat, and they asked me where I was calling from. I said New Jersey, and I race at Wall State, and they said, hold on a second, we got a guy that wants to talk to you, and it was J.J. Jensen, was working at Butler Seats down there at the time. Is he still down there?
No kidding. I think he's in Florida, but I'm not positive. I hadn't heard from him.
Yeah, it was about 5 years ago. I called down there for leg supports, and they put J.J. Jensen on the phone.
No kidding.
I thought you mentioned earlier that you did get to take a Craftsman truck out at Flemington.
I did. It was Ling's truck.
Oh, okay.
Pete was supposed to drive it at the race coming up, and we did an exhibition. I think John Jr. was driving the third's truck, and somebody else was driving somebody else's truck, and then Ling asked me to take out third truck. And he wanted, everybody else is just out there putting around. And Ling says, you need to get on it and see if you feel anything, because this is a new truck. And, and I had run there quite often at that time. So I jumped in it, and, man, I hammered down as much as I could. I just wish I had an open track, because I caught the other guys after about a lap and a half. I started in front of them, and I come on a lap and a half, I'm back on them. And then there's the fun end right there. Now what do I do? But yeah, I would have loved to race that thing, because it was amazing how I thought it was going to be a big slug. And it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was actually quite powerful.
I mean, you raced modifieds there, and now you're racing something pretty much basically like a high-powered street stock with the weight of it and the wheelbase and all that stuff,
Yeah, but it had pretty darn good horsepower.
I mean, Donling was always like a Hutter guy. Do you know what motor was in that truck?
I don't remember. So no, I don't.
All right, so you're crew chief, and you mostly did the truck series. You did mention that you did crew chief one truck race. Was that with Bill Lester also?
One cup race I did with Johnny Benson at Atlanta.
Oh, you did with Johnny Benson. He's a good racer.
Yeah, that was the fish that got away from me, because the first half of the year when I was car chiefing was with a young driver, and then when he fell out, and they put Johnny in the seat. So I worked the second half of that season with Johnny Benson, and him and I became really good friends, and we had, a good time together. We enjoyed similar stuff. Of course, we both still race cars, and we both love to race. So, we just hit it off well. So then as, I get into the 22, I've got Bill, and after 2 years with Bill, he moved on, and there's a position. I was first supposed to go over to do Hornaday at Harvick's team. Wally Rogers actually called me. He's over there. He was crew chief, and he's going to go into a different role, and he's asking me to come over and talk to Harvick about doing that. And I went and I met with Harvick and talked to him, and then I researched a bunch like I normally do, and it just didn't feel like a good fit, and I didn't feel right about leaving Bill after doing as much as he's done for me. So I stayed, and then I had a couple other rookie drivers, and then Johnny Benson comes available. And I think here's my time. This is right in 2008 coming up. And I don't know what happened. It still escapes me today, but that was like the fish that got away, because here we are, two guys, we're friends, we enjoy working with each other, and something happened in the communication that it slipped right out before I could get it. And Trip Bruce gets it. He goes on to win a bunch of races in the championship that year. And I think I had 8 rookie drivers that year.
And Trip Bruce now, he's working with Stuart Friesen now, right?
Yeah. So.
All right. So obviously you don't crew chief anymore. You pretty much open up your machine business down there and down south now. You mentioned that earlier in the interview. What was your last crew chiefing job, and why did you leave working on the NASCAR side? Well, a little bit before getting into that last team, I was supposed to go to RCR and do Ty Dillon's deal, and it was wait a month and then we'll bring you in. I mean, I got brought in, talked to the people. Mike Dillon was showing me around, showing me the shaker rigs and the plates where they build the bodies, and then jigs where they build the chassis, and you'll have a group just like this and all that. And then he says, just give me a month and we'll get you in here. And then within that month, Richard Childress had one of the car chiefs for a Cup team come to him and say, you told us you would hire from within. I want that job. So they felt compelled to put him in, so that left me hanging. So I ended up going with Stacy Compton's team, which is a low-budget team, last minute. Everybody else has got jobs already at this point. So I ran with him with a road race guy that he'd run trucks for a while, and he did okay, but he just didn't have a good understanding of ovals, and it just was really tough working. No money, you can't get everything you need. You got a limited number of people, and it was just getting more frustrating. And NASCAR was just putting the hammer down on it. You couldn't touch anything on the trucks, which was my passion. This is what I live for. I want to make it better. I went to Daytona and helped Bruce cook one time, and they pretty much gave you the setup. Like, they gave you shocks and springs and say, this is what you got to use. Yeah. They had them in such a tight box where you can't really be creative anymore.
I do believe I saw Stacy Compton win at Flemington back in 94, 95.
Yeah, he sure can drive, but he just didn't have enough money behind him.
Compton's team, and he had other drivers in the truck.
Yes, he was done driving for many years, and he had other drivers in the truck. So we just didn't have any money and didn't have the best drivers, and we didn't have the best teams. I mean, I just couldn't take it anymore. We ran out of money halfway through the season, and they wanted me to do start and park stuff, and I always told myself I'd never do that. I didn't come down here to just show up and go home. I want to race, and I guess that was the point in my life that I just said I need to make a change. This is not fun anymore. I do this because I have a passion for what I do, and if I got to go mad to work every day because I don't really want to be there, there's no sense being there.
How hard was it to start your machine shop business up down there? Did you still have equipment, or did you have to buy everything new again?
Oh, I bought everything new. I never even knew how to turn a CNC on in 2010. I mean, I obviously could figure it out, but literally have never turned one on at that point, because our shop was all manual, engine lathes and drill presses and stuff, and Bridgeports. Now here I'm buying, CNCs and trying to figure out how to write G code. And
do you have a Haas CNC?
I have a Haas. I have a brand new one.
Do you really?
Yeah. But it's been a long, tough draw. I mean, it started in 2010. I started buying equipment. And man, up until a few years ago, this last administration, and it was hard to find work. There was just nothing out there, and everything you were fighting for was pennies. And then all of a sudden things changed, and we were kicking butt these last 3 years. And then this coronavirus thing hit, and we're having a banner year again. I'm hiring more people, and it looks like this is going to be a success now. And it's like somebody just pulled the rug out from under us, and we went from top of the world to right to the bottom of the bucket.
Yeah, I'm having the same trouble with my towing business. Once they threw that travel ban up and the people were off the roads, it really killed my towing business that I spent 15 years building. But I'm going to tough it out and keep it going.
Yeah.
Where is your shop? Is it something at your house, or are you renting space somewhere?
I rent space from where, I'm sure you heard of CB Products. They used to sell parts to everybody in Cup Series and late models. And I'm right in their complex. CB's no longer there, but I rent from Clyde Vickers, who is CB. And I've been there for, I guess, since 2011. So it's been a little while now.
That work down there, because every building down there has a history behind it. Like, it's always a former race shop. Oh, this used to be the Mellon shop. This used to be Jimmy Spencer Motorsports, like that. I always thought that was really cool down there too.
Yeah, it's been a really cool ride down here. I mean, I wish I was racing. I actually dabbled in it a little bit while I was working in the shop. I did some late model gigs with some people in short tracks. And had some fun with that, but I sure do miss racing up in New Jersey.
Do you still own a race car?
No, I sold everything I had back in 2005 to a guy, car, trailer, everything. Wow. And
because we remember you coming up here on a whim and winning an ROC race at Wall Stadium.
Yeah, that was the last car. That was the one I built for Flemington, and we ran the Southern Modified Tour. Not full time, but a handful of times. I mean, we won Langley 2 years in a row. And then we ran competitive everywhere. I mean, sat on the pole. We had the track record at Ace for probably 10 years and so on. But no, I just got to the point where I couldn't do it all. I couldn't be on the road and drive a modified. And we didn't have the people. I knew everybody in New Jersey. I come down here, I didn't know anybody. And the people I did get to know, they don't want to work on race cars. They do. If they work on them all day, they surely don't want to work on them all night. It wasn't like back home. I could work on them.
Pay top dollar. It's a job down there. You know what I'm saying? Up here where everybody volunteers their time and helps out, It's funny you mentioned Langley Speedway. I used to rent a shop next to Mike Carpenter and Mike Carpenter's brother-in-law. I was getting ready to go race down in Langley Speedway, and he's like, "Oh, I've been to Langley Speedway," and I'm assuming he went down there with you, because he's like, "Oh, when you go down there, you gotta go to this place called the Great Steak." It was a steakhouse by Langley Speedway, and I just remember the place. You could just cook your own steak, like they bring the steak out to you raw, and you would cook it right on.
And you just cook it? No, I've never been to that.
Place. And that brings me to my next question. Is usually one of our final questions for our guests, because we've had you on for an hour and a half now. Okay. Sorry, it goes by quick, I promise you I'll get you off in an hour, but it's been an hour and a half. So what I want to finish first, I want to thank you for coming on. You have great stories and a long history, racing history, and I mean, really done everything in the sport, from starting racing to owning a business, making money in racing, promoting a racetrack for a short time, moving down to the NASCAR world. I mean, you have a great career in racing. We always like to ask our guests, because you've been to so many racetracks all over, what was your favorite food at a racetrack? It could be any racetrack, big track, short track. You can even name a few if you want.
Favorite food?
Yeah, like track
food.
That's
a tough question, because I don't really ever pay attention to much of that. New Egypt was always the best food as far as I was concerned.
You know what? Everybody says that, like the Garback's meatball sauce and stuff like that.
Yep.
You don't remember
that was the best to me.
You don't remember anything out west that maybe a cup track or anything like different that you tried at a cup track, like say out west or like Indy or anything like that?
Well, in Indy, we went to a Mongolian grill, which is, instead of them bringing the meat to you and you cooking it, you go in a almost like set up like salad bar. You can pick up all the spices, whatever meat you want, chicken, fish, whatever, and any vegetables and stuff. And then you bring it over to this big round grill, and then you just hand it off to them, and then they cook it right there for you, and you tell them what you want. That Mongolian grill was pretty good. But, I'm sure there was many others, but that one always stuck in my head. And we actually got one now here right in Winston-Salem. So
just stay away from
Mongolian grill.
Just stay away from the boiled peanuts if you ask Scott, right?
Yeah, we don't like.
Yeah, I don't do boiled peanuts.
Just a couple more questions for you from travel on the NASCAR circuit.
Oh, can I interrupt with one question real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Doug, what's your relation to Jay?
To Jay.
Jimmy Wolcott, right?
Jason
Jimmy
Wolcott.
Oh, Jason's my nephew.
Nephew, okay. Yeah,
you're
my brother's son.
You're related to Jimmy Wolcott and Michael Wolcott as well, right?
Yeah, it's all my brother's sons. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, just keep him away from the car if you can. I let him run mine for 2 mechanics races, and he's bounced off the wall, and then another time tore the bumper off or something. Yeah.
and then your niece's son, right? Shannon Coulthall's son, Ryan Coulthall, is racing too.
Yeah, he runs quarter midgets. I think this year he's moving up into a Legends car.
Yeah, I think they bought a Legend car off of Doug French.
Yep.
He's been on the show.
He's a pretty good wheelman. I think he could be pretty good. I mean, I've gone up and helped and worked on some things with him over the years, and I think he's a really good wheelman. He's got a good head on his shoulders. Just a matter of how things play out, of course. I mean, but I think he can. I think he can get it done. I think you might see your next up and comer when he gets into the big cars.
Yeah, he's a good kid. Just so you know, you're the second person in your family that's been on this show. We've had Ryan on this show a couple of times before. So
really?
Yeah,
you're actually following in his footsteps on this show.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he came on at one of the live shows at the River Rock.
Yeah, he was good.
Well, this one was perfect for the simple reason it's show number 172. That was always. Every time I saw a 1 in front of the 72, I knew it was an omen. Because 1 was you're in first place, and 72 is my number, so I was happy with when I heard that.
And that just shows you're a true racer. Everybody that comes on here always says how they recognize their number. Like they can go to a hotel room and they'll get hotel room number 172. You know,
right.
You'll see the number 72 coming up in your life a lot.
Yes, absolutely. It's a lifelong thing. I don't think it's ever going to leave. It's probably going to be on my gravestone.
What's it, Tim?
In the modified, is there a racetrack that you never got to race at that you wish you did with the modified?
New Hampshire. I never got to race New Hampshire. I mean, we finished up one race before New Hampshire, and so I never got to go there. And of course, I never had the money myself to travel much other beyond Pennsylvania. So yeah, that was the one track I wish I did. And my favorite track is Thompson.
Oh yeah,
man, there's just nothing cooler than the speed and the corner entry speed, the banking, just phenomenal.
I consider that like the perfect size modified racetrack. Do you?
Yeah, I do. And I don't know, it's a little bit tougher today. I watch some of the tour shows and they seem to wreck a lot more. But back in 90 when I got to race it, there was so much respect, but so hard racing going on. It was phenomenal with the level of competition. I mean, you got Reggie and, Jamie was in the U2 then. He won the championship that year I raced. And you get Jan Leedy and Unisco and Steve Park and so on, and just Mike McLaughlin, and these guys were run these tracks a million times, and here I'm up running in the top 10 and top 5 with these guys. It was like a dream come true. So I always, when people ask me what do I think about it, it's like I feel so blessed to even be involved or ever was able to drive a modified, much less be able to compete at some of the levels I was able to at times.
Did you ever do the New Smyrna Speedway thing with a modified?
Never got to race there, other than sim racing. No, I've only been there one time, and I was at Daytona for a race, and we went over there just to watch.
It's a cool track, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. As I was, that would have been tailor made for me because that's my kind of track.
Yeah. If you ever read Richie Evans' book, he always said that was his favorite modified track, and he said that was the perfect sized modified racetrack.
Yeah, it's another one of those things that the bucket list I would have liked to have done, but I think that ship has sailed.
Just our second last question. I'm just wondering, like all the NASCAR tracks you've been to with your NASCAR career, like where do you really enjoy going to? Did you enjoy going to like Indy or Daytona or Talladega? Like which track would you circle on the calendar and say this is just a cool place to go?
Dover and Kentucky, without
Really?
a doubt. Yeah, because one, I don't know, I like the place. Two, we always had fast trucks at both places. I mean, Dover for one, I've won the pole there, and Bristol's another one. Won the pole there. We won our race there with Scott Speed. Kentucky, I took 3 different rookies 3 years in a row and almost won every one of them for, a flat tire or a bad restart or, something happened that took us out, but we had the fastest truck there that day. I mean, Hornaday's leading, and we passed Hornaday around the outside of 3 and 4 and just yarded them and was checking out. And, man, it looked like we were going to blow them away that day. And, just racing's racing. Things happen.
If I remember correctly, I think Don Ling took his truck to Kentucky. I think the first year they raced the trucks there.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, I think that's one of the races Don Ling actually made with that truck. I know they didn't race it that much, but I think Kentucky was one of them. I think I watched an old Kentucky race on YouTube, a truck race, and Donnie Ling Jr. was in that race. Thought that was pretty cool. What about like going to Indy for the first time, like just walking into that place?
It's really cool, the whole atmosphere of it. But my first 2 years of going to Indy was just as part of the R&D and testing team. Mm-hmm. So I spent 10 hours a day in this ridiculously hot oven of a garage. And so it's really hard to enjoy that process when you're working like a dog and it's just so hot. There's no air moving around. And so it takes the shine off it a little bit. But it's for me, the first day I went to Daytona as a crew chief and just got to stand there and then they play the national anthem. I was a wreck right then. I mean, just, I'm very patriotic. I love, racing. I love NASCAR. And here I am standing, in the third from the top series as a crew chief. I couldn't feel any more happiness than I could at that point, other than, when we did get the win at Dover.
I'll tell you what, I had that little bit of feeling myself at this year's Daytona 500, just with Donald Trump being there and everything. I thought that was a pretty cool patriotic moment that the president was at the Daytona 500, and I think it was very well done. I
do too. I think it's great. Actually, Chip Weil, who runs Daytona, he actually started with us at Bill Davis.
Oh, really?
He was come fresh out of college, and he was just in sales and sponsor stuff. And he progressed all the way up through the ranks and ran Darlington for years, and then they moved him up to Daytona, and he was there. He's the one who came up with the deal for Darlington a few years back where they did the retro paint schemes and stuff.
Oh, really? That's big.
Yeah. So he's really impressed. If you met him when he first came, and then you see him now, it's like night and day, and he's really done a stupendous job being a part of that whole deal. And then bringing the president there, that's something that's, what we saw Reagan do that many years ago when Petty won his last race, but this year was different. It was the beginning of the race, and this was really cool. That
would you ever take a crew chiefing job again, or is that ship sailed?
Oh, I would, but it'd have to be the right situation. It's changed so much. We used to have full control, but like I was looking at cup jobs there when I was really, I was touted pretty high there for a long time in the truck series because I was taking people who had never raced in truck series. They come from sprint cars or whatever, and they would immediately be fast in a truck, and they're running up front. So a lot of people were trying to get me to come their way. And then I actually interviewed at Red Bull for a Cup team, and I'm sitting there talking to Elton Sawyer, and he was telling me that I pretty much had no choices in what vehicle I choose, what spindles I put on, or anything. I said, well, what do I get to choose? He said, shocks and springs. I'm like, well, what do you need me for? I said, I'm just a glorified race caller.
Yeah, basically your choice is what lap you're going to pit for fuel.
Yeah. So yeah, it just, those kind of things don't excite me. I like to do what I've done my whole life. What Dick Barney, taught me about race cars is, find every little piece of that race car and find a way to make it lighter, find a way to make it better, find a way to make it get you through the corner quicker. And that's what your lifeblood is. If you do that, I mean, Dick used to tell me, I don't really care about the checkered flag as much as I want to win practice. I want to win the heat race, and I want to win the feature, and I want to do it in a dominating fashion.
I got to know Dick Barney very well, too, through my towing business, because I do all the towing for him. He says he enjoys just going over to the racetrack during practice and just to see if he can get the car faster. He says that's even more fun to him than actually winning a race nowadays. He just loves making changes on his race car and seeing it get faster on the racetrack. And I know in Cup, like, they took a lot of that away. Like, you say you'd spend a whole day in Indy doing R&D. They don't even really do that much anymore, right? Didn't they get rid of most of the testing and stuff now?
They had. I don't know if they are doing more now than they had for the last bunch of years, but they had gotten rid of them for all of them. And you couldn't even go to short tracks. Like, we used to go to Caraway or New River Valley or something like that and test brakes or, maybe test some suspension stuff. They even wouldn't allow you to do that for years.
Yeah, I remember Tommy Mullen showed up with a Cup car at Thompson and did some laps, testing stuff like that, But
they even took all that away. It just it made it where it wasn't fun to be who you had been forever, because it's just, you're locked in a box. You might as well just call it IROC racing.
Right, and basically with this car coming into it, it's even going to get worse.
Yes, and I never enjoyed that, and I don't think that's a successful thing, because what fan wants to see everybody the same speed? They want to see their guy come through the field. I mean, watching Dale Earnhardt at Rockingham starting dead last and having the lead by lap 55, that's racing.
Right.
Watching Jimmy Johnson start on a pole and lead 200 laps, it's not racing to me. I want to see racing. I want to see them going side by side. I want to see Tim Richmond and Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace banging each other in the Winston, and driving sideways through the corner, or Harry Gant, smoking the right rear tire for the last 50 laps at Dover to win. I mean, that's what made it exciting. This vanilla race, it doesn't make it.
Do you watch the races on TV, or have you lost interest? Do you even anymore?
I don't really watch it much, but since this COVID-19 thing kicked in, they've been playing some of these old races.
Right.
And it's amazing. The minute they turn them on, I'm fixated on that race.
I know.
Like they had the old Richmond Fairgrounds race, and I watched it, and I've watched more laps of racing watching that than I had in the last 3 years combined, because I watched the whole race. And that's what I love right there. Yeah. You go watch an old Norks Wilkesboro race. I mean, those Norks Wilkesboro, they were awesome.
My brother loves North Wilkesboro. He's still one of the holdouts that thinks there's going to be a Cup race there again someday.
Oh, I wish they would, because that was some of the best racing you'd ever see.
Yeah. Did you ever run your modified at North Wilkesboro? I know they had some races down there.
No, it was always, I was in New Jersey when they were racing, and when I got down here, they wasn't racing anymore, and then they started back up again. But at that point, I was already into something else. So, there's another one of them tracks that I wish I could have, but no, I didn't.
All right, Doug. Well, we have you on for 2 hours now. I told you.
Well,
the first
know
question
what you got into when you got talking about
Josh,
racing.
he asked me, he's like, well, what time do you start and how long of a show is it? I said, well, we start at 7 o'clock, and you can either be on for an hour or a half hour or whatever you want to do. He's like, I might be able to do an hour. I said, don't be surprised if you're on there longer than an hour, because it goes by quick.
Yeah.
Doug,
once I get talking about racing, it's what I love. So I go on for another 2 hours probably.
We might have to have a Doug Wolcott part 2. we really appreciate you coming in on. You had a great memory and you remembered a lot about your racing career and you told everything you needed to tell about it. We just want to thank you for coming on and we wish you very well.
Well, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. It's been actually been a lot easier than I thought it could have been because, you never know what's going to be coming in, but you guys do a great job. And thank you for everything you do.
All right. Thanks a lot, Doug.
All right. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Take care.
Hey everyone, this is Eric Brennan from the RPM Podcast. When it comes to finding a company that fulfills all of your towing and vehicle transportation needs, look no further than Riggleman Towing. Riggleman Towing provides 24-hour services for both local and long-distance towing. Whether you're moving your race car, daily driver, or junk cars, they're a fully insured operation that can and will cover all of your towing duties. For more information, visit rigglemantowing.com and follow them on Facebook. That's Riggleman Towing, owned and operated by our very own RPM Podcast teammate, Scott Riggleman.
And we're back. The second half of the episode with the RPM Podcast, episode 172. We just want to thank Doug Wolcott for coming on and doing the local legend racing series with us. Man, what a great interview!
I had no idea how much stuff he had done and been involved in. I mean, I knew he had a racing history, and I'm sure there are going to be plenty of stories. But the different places, careers, the whole thing was just I didn't expect that.
Even to me on this show tonight was like me. I learned a lot. I didn't follow Doug all that closely growing up, and I actually learned a lot tonight too. So
I actually did follow Doug quite a bit, and that's how I knew about his NASCAR career and stuff. I follow people all through their career, and when they do move down south, I like to follow what teams they go to. I still follow a few people like Bruce Cook and Wally Rogers and stuff like that, and I like to see where these guys end up and where they go because it is always changing down there. People are always moving around. It was just funny when I talked to Doug. I've been talking to Doug all weekend about coming on the show, and he was actually brought to me by a guy named Stephen Reed, not the Stephen Reed that races, but Stephen Reed, the race fan. He's the one that actually set it up for me to have Doug walk on the show. I want to thank Stephen for that. But Doug kept messaging me. He's like, well, how long are we going to talk? How long is it going to be? I said, we usually do about an hour. He's like, man, you'll be lucky if you get a half hour. I mean, I'm like, Doug, trust me, we might get an hour, hour and a half, and then I'm going 2 hours, and he still had more stories for us to tell. He was a great guest. We did have a little trouble with his phone conking out a couple times on us, but Josh is going to clean that up for us. Just thanks, Doug, for coming on, and what a great interview. And we're going to keep doing these local legends interviews. I think it's great because you do learn a lot about these people. Some stuff you might have forgot about or didn't realize when they were doing it. I think it's going great, and we're just going to keep doing it. We're not sure who the next one's going to be. We might mix it up a little bit. I mean, we've had 4 modified drivers on that.
Yeah, Scott was big on getting someone that wasn't a modified driver for this week. And
yeah, maybe we'll go with a street stock driver or modern stock driver or something like that. Maybe mix it up a little bit. We might even go to Route 2 where we might get like some of that works in the industry, like an announcer, like a Jeff Gravatt or an Earl Krause or Bobby Mentner, like a track crew guy that's been around the racetrack. I mean, it doesn't have to be a modified driver. It can be anybody that's been involved in local racing for a very long time that's willing to have some good stories and talk.
Scott, you did say Jeff Gravatt was interested in coming on, right?
Yeah, Jeff. I talked to Jeff quite a bit. Me and Jeff became pretty good friends through Facebook Messenger. He actually helps me prepare for some of these interviews. If I ever have a question, I can ask him. He's got a great memory. He's been around racing forever. He can always kind of tip me off on like who raced for who back when and where they were from and all stuff like that. He helps me out with some of the.
Well, I mean, Jeff has a ton of racing knowledge, especially from the local stuff. And now it's funny. I think his business, as far as drawing up the proposals and stuff for a race sponsor. And so the drivers or teams would go to Jeff, and he would write up a whole kind of like a sponsor packet that you could give to Nancy
this is 99 proposal deal. We've gotten a few sponsors by using Jeff's template that he has for finding sponsors. It works real good. He's done a few proposals for me and Nancy, and they work. They work. It's very professional. It's something to give your sponsors, and they always contact you back. And it seems like it always seems to work for us.
He advertised it a lot, so I jokingly said to Scott that we could offer Jeff a guest spot on the podcast for $99. But other than that, I know that his business has been struggling a bit too, just because there's nobody racing. So and Scott, you were saying with a lot fewer people on the road, there's less cars breaking down and needing a tow and stuff. So it's
Jeff is kind of doing the same thing we are. We're doing like the old drivers on our show. He's reprinting and showing every week his old racing show.
Yeah, he's been replaying all those Let's Go Racing episodes that he did back in the early '90s, and he's been playing them on YouTube. It's I'm not sure what his YouTube channel is, but I'm sure
Jeff Cravat Marketing.
Yep,
Jeff Cravat Marketing. Yeah, if you want to watch some old Let's Go Racing episodes from back in the early '90s, I will see him. Go check out YouTube. It's Jeff Cravat.
Just wait till the end of this episode here first.
Hey, I want a quick story about that. When that show was on, we were, 1991. Scott graduated high school. I graduated in '90, so we were just got our license and stuff. We all used to go to John Blue III's house and watch it, and there'd be 30 of us in there watching that half-hour show. And what future race car drivers were there watching the show with us? It's amazing who they were. Now they're racing there. It's just funny to go back in time. And
no, that's really cool.
Josh, another crazy idea I got going, and I did ask Jeff Cravat about this. You and my brother have been kicking around the idea of getting a call of Wall album. If we got the album, is there any way you can play it on the podcast and we can discuss it?
Yeah,
it would have to go from a record player to playing it on here.
So it's a vinyl, right?
Yeah, it's a vinyl record.
Okay. I believe I have a couple record players. No, I'm not. Too young. Jeez, people are saying.
So you put it on a record player. You could probably put like a microphone to it so we could hear it on the podcast and we could stop.
If I have a good record player, I would actually use the RCA analog out. And digitally record it and make a digital copy of it, and we could go over. I don't think we'll run into any YouTube content ID stuff with that, but yeah.
All right, so listeners, we're looking for two things. First, we're looking for the album itself. We're looking for a Call of Wall album. I asked Jeff Cravat. Jeff Cravat does not have a copy of it. And number two, we're looking for a good record player that Josh can use to play it on the show. What we want to do is we want to play the Call of Wall album, and we'll play like a part of it, stop it, we'll discuss what happened in that part, and then we'll play it a little bit longer. So if we can find those two things, that's another episode we want to do one day.
Yeah, if you do have either of those, feel free to message us on Facebook. You can comment on the YouTube this video down below here. But also racingpodcastnj@gmail.com would be probably the best way to reach us, and then we can go from there and arrange whatever. And we would honestly just be borrowing it to make the digital copy, and then everybody can have everything back. So, yeah.
There was one for sale on eBay. Tim, did you ever keep an eye on that to see how much it sold for, or if it sold at all?
It never sold. They wanted $40.
They were asking like $40 for it or something like that. I told Tim to bid $5, but we never even bid on it.
Yeah. Was that a reserve, or was that just the buy it now price?
I think that was the opening bid price.
Okay, 'cause I think you can offer less, and then it's up to the seller if they can do the whole reserve thing. God, I hate auctions. Speaking of which, Barrett Jackson thankfully is not doing their stuff.
Yeah, I get that you don't like that, but that is considered a sporting event, and with it being in Connecticut, it just goes to show that I don't think there's going to be any racing in Connecticut anytime soon.
Probably not.
When the auto auction was supposed to be?
I do not know the exact date, but I do know that when Barrett Jackson is going on, I am at either Stafford or Thompson for a tour race, because it kills me, because I would always if I was in a tour race, I would be there for that. So
I don't mind seeing the cars. It's just the whole bidding back forth and
the whole yelling and screaming.
Yeah. I'd rather just almost like at a car show. Let me admire the car, and then maybe ask the owner a few questions about it, or maybe get a story about the history or something like that. That I'm totally down with. But the whole back and forth screaming at each other, and I don't know. No, it's not for me. And it just goes on and on. And for some reason, that when they could be playing other races and other stuff, they just put that on for hours and hours at a time, and it just frustrates me. I was like, I'd rather watch racing.
See, I can watch it from start to finish, and people ask, how can you do that? Like you just said, you can't stand it. What it makes me interested in it is, I mean, we've all seen, whatever, pick a car, 64 Impala. We've all seen hundreds of them, you know?
Okay.
But these guys, when they get on the block, they'll be like, this car here it's one of three. It's got a left rear cigarette lighter in it that only 3 people ever ordered. Like, how do you know that? You know, that's what makes that show interesting. You learn things about.
I'm not against the history part of it, but
I hear you.
It's if they did that and I like shows like, well, for the most part, I liked Wheeler Dealers. I didn't really care for the end when they're going back and forth. Oh, I made 50 quid on this. Like, great.
Yeah, that guy actually, he does another show now. You know that? The guy that actually did the work.
Okay. The ridiculously tall guy.
He does his own show now. It's really good.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I like him.
Another show for you to hate, Josh.
What's that?
What's that?
That could be another show you could hate, Josh.
No. I like him, so I'll probably like that show.
But every time I get interested in the auto auctions, when they bring a car across that, like, I might have grown up and saw as a kid, maybe like something like a Knight Rider car or General Lee, or maybe like Dale Earnhardt's, first Cup wing car or something like that. That's when I get interested. If it's just a normal Z28 Camaro, 69 Camaro, it really doesn't get too interesting.
I remember they were trying to sell a Robosaurus for $1 million, and it went for like 400,000.
Yeah. And then there's some things I think are funny too, is like someone has like a 69 Camaro and they want like 120,000 for it, and the bidding stops at like 30,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, nice try, buddy.
If the car's not on Saturday, it's not worth anything. You know what I mean? That's when the big cars go off the Saturday.
All right, guys.
Friday night.
All right, guys. I think we're going to have a show record long show here got going on here, so I kind of want to move.
I think our record is 4 hours, believe it or not.
We're getting close.
Yeah, we're getting closer than we'd like. So
nobody's got anything else to do tomorrow but listen to us, so we'll be all right.
I have to go to work.
Yeah, Josh will have to.
I have to edit this stuff together. So let's do the national stuff real quick. NASCAR was doing they were virtually at Dover, with the iRace, the E-Pro, whatever, Invitational, whatever it is. I always screw it up. So
they were at Dover. They were at Dover doing the iRacing thing. Once again, it was won by William Byron. He's killing these guys. I mean, I think it's 3 wins out of 4 races. He's a professional iRacer that became a Cup driver. These guys are other Cup drivers trying to do iRacing. You know what I'm saying? He was a professional iRacer that made it to Cup. You know?
Yeah.
And he smoked guys. He's really outclassing the field. You know what I'm saying? I did watch it. I watched the whole thing. It was pretty enjoyable. I mean, they do the flyover thing, and they do national anthem. They do all that stuff. The only thing that looks fake to me is the crashing. The crashing's
it's a little over
exaggerated.
Yeah.
A little. Well, they don't crumple. They just bounce and fly up and pirouette and all sorts of stuff. I was going to watch it. But... Go ahead, Scott.
So they did Dover this week. We're going to give you the top 10 here as soon as Josh can get it pulled up.
Yep.
What we're more excited for is next week.
What did Ryan Preece finish? He ended up working at the end because he started last because he won the week before.
He was 29th.
He made his way up to 4th or 5th, and he tweeted on his tweet there that he had a 2-way Bluetooth headset on where he could talk to NASCAR, the guys like Jeff Gordon and all them in one, and he could talk to a spotter in the other, and it's all done through Bluetooth. And that headset is available through Waddell Communications. So any of you iRacers out there that want that headset, contact Waddell at Waddell Communications, and you will have the same exact headset.
That's pretty cool that Waddell's getting into the virtual racing side of things as well. It's
right
up his alley, the electronics guy.
Yeah.
Racing stuff.
For some reason, that they've been trying to do that simple thing, and apparently Waddell was the one that figured out how to do it. So,
Well, maybe Waddell can figure out how to get a record player to work on our podcast.
he probably could. It would probably take me about 4 hours of him yelling at me on the phone. I can't find it. It's down here somewhere.
So,
All right, so Dover was pretty exciting. Josh, can you give us the top 10 on that?
well, Ryan Preece finished 29th. It says disconnected. Instead of DNF or whatever, they have running or disconnected.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's makes it a little different, makes it a little more fun, I guess, and for what it is. So, William
I guess
Byron.
even those big $1 million homes on Lake Norman, even I guess their Wi-Fi goes out too, Josh.
Yeah, that or they have kids walking in and turning stuff off, which is why I keep the door closed. All right, so William Byron, as we said, gets the win, followed by Christopher Bell, Timmy Hill, Eric Jones, Michael McDowell, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Alex Bowman, Garrett Smithley, and Eric Almirola. That's your top 10 there.
Okay, and the other big thing announced, which my brother's going to be excited about, and I'm pretty excited about it too. The next race they're doing on this iRacing eNASCAR thing is they're bringing back North Wilkesboro. So we're finally going to see some sort of race on North Wilkesboro, and I think it's going to be cool. I think it's really going to be a good thing. I know my brother's going to enjoy it. I'm not sure if they're doing it. I don't know if I heard it somewhere or was this something I thought up in my head. I think it'd be a perfect time not only to have a race at North Wilkesboro on iRacing, but make it a throwback race. Go to like throwback paint schemes.
Mike Joy mentioned he suggested that they do the throwback paint schemes. He didn't say they were going to. He suggested that they do. What's cool about it, if you saw the pictures of it, like the paint's still peeling on the walls and everything. Like it doesn't look like a brand new racetrack. It looks like it's closed down, which is cleaned up a little bit.
It's going to be cool.
Yeah,
it's definitely going to be cool.
Nice. Yeah, so that's going to be from my understanding, that's going to be the final round of the iRacing for NASCAR because they are looking to start real racing come May 17th.
Awesome.
So
it worked. I mean, we goof on it all we want, but it worked. It helped us get through the downtime, and now real racing's coming back, so now it's time to move on. And I think North Wilkesboro is the perfect race to end it with.
Yeah, and they did something no other sport could do during this unprecedented
Josh, you
time.
keep saying that, but I didn't watch it or I didn't even click on it. But when I was flipping through the channels the day, I did see simulated football advertised on one of the channels. I just never.
Yeah, but like Josh said, it's not the skill level. You're sitting here, you're hitting XO triangle.
Okay.
It's not like where you're actually running. Or we're the cup
Another thing I see too, I just seen it on the ticker on the bottom of the screen. They had a virtual Kentucky Derby with all the old horses like Seattle Slew and Secretary and all that stuff.
That'd be cool. I'd watch that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd watch it all day, but I'd watch a good one.
And the only reason I know these names is I lived in a development before I bought my house down here in Manchester. All the streets were named after horses: Seattle Slew, Secretariat, Ruffian. So it was pretty cool to see those names up again. So they had a virtual race, and it was a throwback race. They went to all the old horses that used to win back in the day. I thought that was pretty.
A throwback horse race. Okay.
All right, Josh, do your quick indie thing. They had their iRacing stuff going on as well.
Yeah, they this was their final iRacing thing, at least for the time being. We'll see where things go. They did it at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which is kind of fitting for them. Tim,
right.
Just so you know, or sorry, Scott, Marco Andretti finished 17th.
Out of how many though? 33 again?
33 again, yes.
Mid back, not bad.
Yeah, I take it, I guess. So I did not get to watch it, but I did see a bunch of stuff saying the final lap was pretty wild. So definitely go at least check out the recap of that. That said, Scott McLaughlin gets his second win of the of this iRacing deal with IndyCar. He's
They're like William Byron, isn't he?
Yeah. He's known for doing iRacing, and he's from New Zealand, and he's hoping to drive in IndyCar or whatever. So maybe he's proven that he, isn't, maybe he's at least worthy of a test or something. So he gets the win, followed by Connor Daly, Santino Ferrucci, Oliver Askew, Patricio O'Ward, Sebastian Bourdais, Ryan Hunter-Ray, Zach Veach, Felix Rosenquist, and Scott Dixon round out your top 10. So yeah, I'm actually planning on, maybe while I'm editing this, I might put it on the TV up here and, watch some of it. Just because I meant to. I was in my crawl space all weekend running new Ethernet wires. So, yeah, that's why I missed all the racing. So, I guess we should move on to our local segment. Scott, I'll let you take it away.
All right. I just want to touch base on something real quick. Something I noticed, because everything is getting canceled because of the COVID thing, including people's graduations, high school graduations are getting canceled. And what some of the racetracks are doing, some of the big cup tracks are doing, which I think is pretty cool, is they're calling them drive-by graduations. Where at Daytona, yeah, that's what it sounded like at first, But what they're doing at Daytona and at Pocono, and I think there's a couple other tracks too, but Pocono just announced it, and I know Daytona was the first one to announce it. What they're doing is they're letting the families of the graduated kids come in their family cars to the racetrack, and they're going to line them up on the racetrack, and they're going to do a parade lap around the racetrack, and when they're all going to be in order and everything, and when the family passes over to start-finish line, the principal of the high school is going to be there to hand the student their diploma.
I think you should just try to throw it in the window, see how good his aim is.
So they're going to wave the checkered flag and hand them their diploma, and that's going to be, kind of how we all walked across the stage to get our diplomas in front of our families. Because of the COVID thing, they can't do that. So the families are showing up in their cars, driving across the finish line, and the kids are getting diplomas. Daytona's doing it. I know Pocono's doing it. I think there was a couple other ones like Texas or something.
I think it's kind of cool, but I think with everybody stopping at the finish line to get their diploma, there's going to be a fender bender. Somebody.
I'm sure people will be Facebooking it live and we'll be able to see it. But I think it's pretty cool. It's going to be something to remember. Now,
Scott, would you, if your family was doing that, you, Nancy, and your child, would you bring your race car, unload your race car, drive around the track in your race car, and stop?
I'd probably put it on my flatbed, do it in the flatbed or something like that. But I would leave it up to Thomas. It's his graduation. And I think we're going to see stuff like that. I think people might rent a fancy car. They might have a limo that they're probably going to be decorated. It's going to turn into like a parade. You know what I'm saying? People are going to do different things to be memorable. I'm sure, say if someone's family has, the father has a classic, Rolls Royce or something, they're going to bring out that car for it. Or if they have a classic convertible Camaro, they're going to bring that.
Can you imagine if they do it in North Carolina, when everybody at the ties of the cup shops, they'll all be out there. Jeff Gordon's, race car.
And again, you might have kids that graduated that have their own cars, like a 4-wheel drive truck or a Jeep or one of these lowrider Fast and Furious type cars. They might even bring out their own car and do it that way.
No, they can't because they're going to scrape as soon as they come off the apron.
It's going to turn into a little bit of a car show / parade / graduation. And like Tim says, there might be a couple fender benders and there might be a family that has a junker and it might break down. You never know.
You have to push them across.
It's good. I'm interested. I'm going to pay attention to it. I want to see how this works out. I think it's going to be pretty cool.
That was good. All right. Now, we did get some not as great news. There was a little press release that came out. When did that come out, Tim?
Today, I believe.
Today.
Okay. Yeah. The head guy, the head honcho from AARN, Len Salmons, apparently tested positive for COVID-19. As well as
not only Lenny tested positive, but his 92-year-old mother tested positive for COVID too,
and potentially his sister.
What's that?
And potentially his sister as well, but I don't think it's been confirmed yet.
And this is what I was nervous about with trying to get the racing back together. It just shows you that some people in our immediate racing family are getting it, and that's what makes it dangerous for these racetracks to open back up.
Yeah, it takes one person, and then it's going to spread, yeah.
Especially a guy like Len Simmons, his job is to walk up, shake your hand, and ask how your race day is going. Yeah. It's scary that way, but, believe me, I've been locked up in this house with my three girls, but this isn't over yet. And just because it's starting to get nice out and everything, and like Scott just said, and Scott talked about it many times during the week. If Wall Stadium was open up Saturday, I would be there. But then again, do you go the first night? Nothing to do with Wall Stadium. It's just my opinion is there's going to be a wave of this. Once everything opens back up, there's going to be another wave of this crap. And
yeah, that's the way me and feel too. We even talked about we're pretty much to the point. If the racetrack did open up back up, we're to the point we had to wear a mask and get our temperature taken at the gate like they're doing NASCAR, then it's not gone yet. It's it's not really worth risking it, And then the later it gets in the year, is it even say if we don't race till like September or end of September, is it really worth racing for a month, or just leave the cars in the garage for next year? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think it would be worth it to do. I mean, if we get to a point where it is safe enough, do a one-off event like a turkey derby or something like that, and that way you can do something. But it's one thing. If we do go back, it's still not going to be normal as things open up. I mean, I'm used to shaking everybody's hand at the track, saying, "Oh yeah, haven't seen you. How was your winter?" All that stuff.
Over. No matter what happens, the handshake's over with.
Yeah,
we're done with the handshake.
But that's part of it. It's going to feel awkward at first, right?
There's going to be 3 things that change that we'll never do again. I'm not sure what they are, but handshake's probably one of them. There might be a thing where, look, I usually don't even worry about what I'm going to eat for dinner until 7 o'clock. Now the restaurants are closed at 7 o'clock. Is that going to be something where, they may never be open after 7 o'clock? And maybe not that, but maybe no more 24-hour so they can clean them. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Properly.
Yeah.
There's going to be like 3 things that change. What they exactly are, I don't know.
It's going to be interesting, but I mean, it's one of those things a lot of people are saying it's as much as Tim and I like our conspiracies, other people are saying this is a conspiracy. They're like, no, we are legitimately seeing people. I have a friend that's gotten it. Now we're talking about one of our head, news outlets for racing, at least locally, it has it. So,
yeah.
I mean, we can sit here all night and talk about this COVID thing, but Josh, you're like everybody else. Everybody keeps saying, like on Facebook, and when I talk to them, oh, the only race we're going to get in this year is Turkey Derby. You know what? I think you guys are wrong about that. I think Turkey Derby is too big of an event to have right now. I think we might get racing in at the end of the year, but it might be where there's only 2 divisions there to keep people away from each other. They might have one Saturday night where it's factory stocks and sportsmen, and then the next week it might be modifieds and late models, and that's it.
I'm all for that. Or if the track had to, I mean, I would volunteer to maybe do a internet broadcast if the track could do a pay-per-view kind of thing and keep the fan.
I don't think the pay. I think pay-per-views come and gone. People don't do that anymore.
Well, I was saying like $2 to watch it online for one event as a fail-safe.
What I was going to suggest is you get a sponsor and he pays the purse for the night, where it doesn't cost the track any money to do anything.
Right.
And have it on YouTube live.
Yeah.
Well, again, I would be more than happy to offer whatever I can to try to make something like that happen, if it came down to it. Especially.
I just noticed tracks out west have been doing that. They've been having racing with nobody in the grandstands, and it might be affordable for them out there to do it that way. But I think the only way Diane's going to have a race is if she have people in the grandstands. I mean, that's where she makes her money. Why do it if you're not going to make money?
Right.
That's what I'd say. If you get somebody to pay for the.
Sponsors are hard to come by nowadays. Everybody's businesses are,
And like you just said, not have full divisions, have like modified and factory stocks, or
Yeah, I just don't think. I think it would be very hard to have a big event like Turkey Derby where we have so many people. I think when they do, I think they're calling it like a soft opening when these places are opening up. They might have to have a soft opening where they only have 2 divisions so we get spaced out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the only thing that concerns me about Wall Stadium is we were always told that they have to have 1 race a year.
That's what I was getting at with.
Yeah, they got to have something, do something.
Yeah,
I think that would get waived in a circumstance like this.
I would hope.
All right, and we also got some bad news. My brother already talked about Barrett Jackson being canceled. We also got some bad local news too. There's a restaurant a lot of the racers go to, called Quaker Steak and Lube over in Bricktown. It's a newer place. I mean, it got popular in this area because when we would all go down to Concord for the North-South Shootout, everybody would hang out at the Quaker Steak and Lube down there, and that turned into the hangout place for the local people down in North Carolina, and we all enjoyed it. Well, then we got lucky, and one opened up right here in Bricktown, and a lot of people still went there and enjoyed the atmosphere of Quaker Steak and Lube. Because of this pandemic, they actually closed down, and they just announced they're not opening back up. So that's one of the buildings that, one of the businesses that are gone to the wayside because of the pandemic.
Now, I was actually pretty surprised at that, mainly because it's a chain, so it should have some backing to it and essentially some security. Also, the food was pretty good, really. My complaint there was whenever we would go there and, maybe on an off night or something like that, we would, some of the factory stock drivers would get together and be like, all right, we'll put the race on and, we'll have some food and some drinks. And they kept changing and turning the race off. Like, it says.
They got a race car on their roof. They
yeah.
can at least put race car races on the TV.
Exactly. So we got a little frustrated with that. But otherwise, yeah, I enjoyed it there. Sometimes my dad and I, after the races, we'd either go to Houlihan's or to Quaker Steak, and I'm just they seem to be doing okay. I'm just really surprised that shut down. So who knows?
They do sponsor local racers, so there's going to be
Tom Fatarusso. They sponsor them.
Anybody's anything to do is clean out of that place. I want the Kyle Busch, the fake Kyle Busch trophy in the window there. I'll take that. Thank you.
I want one of the fuel cans.
Another thing I mentioned a few podcasts ago, we talked about Rowdy Kyle Busch starting his own energy drink, Rowdy Energy. He always sponsored it on his late models. It's supposed to be like a healthy energy drink, no sugar, all natural stuff to give you energy. So that's why I was interested in it. But it was only sold online. You had to go to a website and order it. My brother did read somewhere that they're starting to get out in the retail world. They're being started to sell in certain stores. Tim, you know what stores are being sold at?
It was only one. It's a chain in North Carolina. It's right on the front page if Josh can pull it up.
It was Hy-Vee or something. Hy-Vee. Yeah.
Okay. So they're starting to get out in the stores. So hopefully one day they'll get up this way. It's something I'd really like to try.
Yeah, I think he has to. It's one of those things that manufacturing the product is one thing, but then getting the distribution is a whole other process. Especially with so many other energy drinks out there that you're competing with, trying to get people to carry it or take the chance on stocking it in their store.
And I heard that's a real battle too. Like the energy drink wars are real. Like
who gets what part of the shelf and everything else.
They call it a strike zone. Did you ever hear that term, Josh?
No.
Like when you go into like a Wawa or a 7-Eleven or something like that, they call it the strike zone. Just like baseball, like from your knees to your shoulders in the refrigerator. That's where you want to be. That's where you want your drink, in the strike zone.
Okay.
So when you open the door, you don't have to bend down or reach up. You want it in the middle. So like a small business like Robbie Gordon even had that Speed Energy and Rowdy Busch. They might get into the coolers, but they might be on the bottom shelf or the very top shelf. And then it takes a while to work your way into the strike zone. And the strike zones are already usually taken up by like the big companies like Coca-Cola and Pepsi and stuff like that.
Or even a Red Bull when you get down to energy drinks. I mean, they're probably the most notable.
So that's a real tough business to break into the real retail part of selling your products at stores.
Now, I will say I actually watched that video, and now Kyle Busch is very well known for speaking his mind. I think we can all agree on that. For some reason, that was the most forced, awkward, like reading a cue card performance I've ever seen from Kyle Busch was that commercial. It was like he was trying to copy the proper hand gestures, and I'm not reading this off of a sign. It felt really, really robotic, really forced. It didn't seem like a natural Kyle Busch thing.
Probably his money. It's all his money in that. He needed to succeed.
I honestly, for me, I think he should have hired somebody to do it for him at that point. Yeah. But him being in it was, he wants his image associate. I don't know. It was whatever. So we'll see how that goes, Scott. I may try that as well. I'm trying to cut down sugar as much as possible myself.
I tell you what, even I've even gained about 20 pounds with all this sitting home and eating thing too. I'm telling you, it's really putting a hurt on a lot of people's diets. Plus, you're not out doing anything. Like usually, I lose 10 pounds at the racetrack, in the course of the day, racing and everything, and now I'm not even doing that.
Well, I scared myself because I mean, I knew I'd gained some weight, which is fine. You get older or whatever. But I hopped on a scale and it said 271.
Whoa.
And I've never hit that in my life. So I was like, okay, gonna do something. So I'm doing. It's similar to the Weight Watchers point tracking program thing, but I found a free app that it works almost identical to that. But so I'm tracking and all the foods and stuff, and I tend to go over, but I'm trying to minimize how much I go over. And
it's just a tough time to try to lose weight right now. I mean, I gained weight over this.
Luckily I'm still working, so yeah. Oh yeah, it's tough, but like I said, at least I'm still out working and wrenching on hydrants and stuff like that. So trying to keep somewhat busy with that, and I'm switching to mostly water. Or Scott got me into the Gatorade Zeros. Yeah, those are pretty good. So I just have to watch out because sometimes, like even if I went with a diet soda, that aspartame or whatever, it ends up giving me headaches.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but the fake sugar just doesn't seem to work. So I can't do that now. So I'm gonna stick to that, or just drink a load of water. Anyway,
all right. Another part of my hobbies that got ruined by this COVID thing is I enjoy camping. I love camping. My race car is sponsored by the Timberland Lake Campground over in Jackson behind Great Adventure. I got a little bit of relief there. They did open up campgrounds to seasonal campers, so I was able to bring my camper over there and get that set up. But unfortunately, the only people there are seasonal people, which is fine. I get along with all of them. But we have to follow all the rules. You can't have like visitors on your campsite. You can't have more than like 5 people on your campsite. The playgrounds are closed. The pool's closed. Like everything's closed, So I can go to my camper now at least, but I'm just going to sit there with me and Nancy, and that's about it. And we're going to make a fire, and that's about it. Another little thing I picked up on, I don't know if people seen on Facebook, because there's nothing else to do. Me and Nancy got into this magnet fishing.
You were talking about it, yeah.
Yeah, you can just go online. You can buy the kit. It was like $35. It's basically a rope with a 600-pound pole magnet on the end of it, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You just go to lakes or streams or rivers, and you toss the magnet in it. You let it drag on the bottom, and you see what you pulled up. So Saturday, when we got done setting the camper up over at Timberland Lake Campground, we took the magnet to the pond, threw it in a few times. Man, that's addicting. It's so much fun. Like you just don't know what you're going to drag up.
What kind of rope is on that, and how do you tie it?
It's like one of those like nylon ropes, like the rock climbers use. You know what I'm saying?
You have a good knot on it, because you're saying this has 600.
It comes with a professional knot on one end with a clip, like one of those aluminum clips.
Okay.
And that clips to the magnet. The magnet has like an eye ring on it, hole on it, and the clip goes in there. But then I tied another clip to the other end of the rope, and I clip it on my belt loop, because when you throw it, the thing's got some weight. The whole rope would just go out into the water. So I actually clip it to myself so I can't lose it when I toss it into the water.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of fun, man. We were dragging it out, and you find a lot of fishing stuff, fishing lures, like pliers that people drop in the water, scissors for cutting the fishing string. You find a lot of stuff like that. But we pulled a metal chair out of the pond, like someone threw a metal chair in it. Because it's a campground, we found a lot of camping stuff, like old grill racks and we even found like little fishing nets, like you use for like scooping the fish out of like the fish tanks. Like kids must have been walking around like scooping up to like tadpoles and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. We found tent poles, a lot of tent poles, and it was funny. We pulled up a cobalt shovel, like a big shovel, and it looked pretty new. We pulled it up, And then the owner of the campground drove by and they're like, "You find anything?" I'm like, "Yeah, we found this shovel. It was a brand new Cobalt shovel." He's like, "Oh, that's mine. I lost that 2 weeks ago." Because at the end of the lake, there's like a drain that goes into a river, and he was unclogging the drain with a shovel, and it slipped out of his hands and fell into the water. So he got his shovel back, stuff like that. But then you'd be surprised how clean some places are. Like we went to Pine Lake right across the street from my house. I was over there for 45 minutes dragging that magnet and never pulled one bottle cap out of the place,
Wow.
And we went down to the Toms River where it goes under 571. I thought that, if anybody was ever to toss a gun or something, they would drive by and toss it over the bridge or something like that. And I drug over there for about 45 minutes and I didn't pull up one bottle cap over there either. A couple fish hooks, that's about it. You'd be surprised.
Try the Toms River over by Huddy Park.
By Huddy Park?
Yeah, I don't know. I just got an inkling that that's going to be a spot you're going to find some stuff.
We're starting to learn you gotta do it somewhere where there's a lot of people, because, like we went out in the middle of nowhere and we didn't find anything, you know what I'm saying? But it's fun. It's something to do while we're waiting to go back racing. It's cheap. It's cheap entertainment,
Yeah.
And it gets me out of the house and not eating and walking around and stuff like that. It's something to do. Something fun I thought I'd share with you guys.
I like it. Scott, you have your review and recommendation and review for us?
Yeah. Yesterday when we got back from Magnet Fishing, Nancy wanted to watch a movie. We went on Netflix, and there's this movie called Lady Driver. It's a racing movie. It's a little corny. It's almost like a Disney type racing movie, where this girl has a dream of, she just goes to the races and wants to race. And like by the second race, she's winning already. And after a month of racing, she gets like a top ride, late model ride. And, like she advanced real quick. And of course she finds out her dad that passed away before she was born got killed in a race, and her mom doesn't want her to race, but the uncle's helping her race, typical plot like that. That's something that'd be in like a Disney type movie or like one of those after school specials on like the Hallmark Channel or something like that. But the reason we liked watching it was pretty cool. It was short track dirt racing. It was filmed at a dirt track out in California. I remember when I first came on the show with you, Josh, I shared the story that I went out there for a wedding. It was one of those destination weddings. One of Nancy's friends got married out in California, and I walked away from the wedding for a little while because I knew there was a racetrack down the street, and I walked like 6 blocks and I found Calistoga Speedway. And that's one of the tracks that she talks about racing, but they don't actually go there. It got filmed at another racetrack down the street in wine country. When I watch a movie like that, I kind of pay attention to the plot, but I more like look around, like when they're in the shop, and I look like, see what kind of tools they're using, what scales they're using, a jack and stuff like that. And it was pretty cool. She towed to the track with an open trailer, which was cool. Trailer's very similar to mine, with a box on it and a tire rack and stuff like that. And Tim, you would like this. What's your favorite type of vehicle to tow a race car with?
I think it'll be a ramp truck.
She towed with an open trailer, so it wasn't a ramp truck. What would you pull on an open?
Cube van.
Not a cube van. What would, before you like the cube?
Oh, the Van Dually.
Yeah, the Van Dually. What were they called?
They were called, the Dodges were called Dreamers.
Weren't they called like Centurions or something like that? Or?
That was the Ford.
Yeah, they had a Ford one.
Yeah, the Centurion. Yeah.
Yeah, they towed it with a Ford Centurion, and I remember when we were kids, Frenchie had one, right, Tim, that towed the 6 car with it. They had one of that.
Troyer had one.
Yeah, they were the vans with like a sleeper on the back, and then they had like a truck body on the back. That's what
we towed John's dirt modified with. East Windsor was a Van Dually.
You had a Van Dually then? Yeah, so that's some of the stuff I like watching this movie about. She towed with a cool open trailer, and she had a cool hauler and stuff like that. But, of course, after 4 races at the local level, someone sponsors her, gives her a full sponsorship, and she's in a full-blown late model with a toter home and everything after 4 races.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool. Like the Super Bowl late model racing was a race at Lucas Motor Speedway, which is a real racetrack, and they show her going there, and they show real racing footage where, Tim McCready was leading the race, and people we know that race were in it. So it's definitely a cool movie. It was on Netflix. It was free. It's called Lady Driver. If you're not doing nothing, check it out. I mean, it's not the greatest race movie in the world, but it is a race movie. And I enjoyed it. It was pretty cool. And the girl was smoking hot too, and so was her mom. So.
I got one for you. There's a movie called The Circuit. It was about late model racing. And again, it fits right in with your Hallmark Disney kind of stuff or whatever. About a female racer played by Michelle Trachtenberg, who I think is kind of cute. And same thing. It started from her dad, and she gets into it, and then she has this rivalry, but love interest kind of. Yeah, you can just check it out. It's another racing movie, and it's worth at least one watch.
Yeah, so was Lady Driver. Lady Driver was cool because it's short track racing. You got to check out some of the short track stuff. And it's like one of those deals. I think Geico had some money wrapped up in it because there was a lot of Geico banner placement. Plus, I think Lucas Oil themselves and MAV TV had something to do with it because there was a lot of Lucas on MAV TV stuff going on in that too. So there was a lot of product placement in it. It was cool though. It was something to watch. Hit home to us a little bit because Nancy races and she's a lady driver too. So it was pretty cool to watch.
I'm trying to think who else was in this movie.
But it's just funny. She beats like the track champion like the first time she races. She's never even raced nothing, and she just got her driver's license.
Were there any cameos?
No, and I didn't. Other than the announcer guy, like Ralph Sheheen or somebody from MAV TV. Other than him, I didn't see any cameos from any other like real race car drivers or anything like that.
Okay, I'm just trying to think if there were any in this other movie.
It was definitely a B class movie, like all B actors. Like I didn't even recognize any of the actors or actresses or anything like that.
Yeah, Michelle Trachtenberg was the only one that I knew from anything that I can remember. I'm just, like I said, I'm just quickly scrolling through IMDb here. Like, all right, well, is there any? And I don't.
So that was on Netflix. If you guys want to check that out, that pretty much just brings us to the end of the show. 3 hours later, we started at 7:05. It's now 9:57 p.m.
I have a
57.
I have something.
See, those race numbers keep popping up. Go ahead, Tim.
I got a phone call from Felix Verlingeri this week. He was
he was mentioned in next week's episode.
He was listening to the RPM podcast, and he was mentioned in the RPM podcast, and he just wanted me to tell everybody that he confirms, validates that what Dave Michaels says is true. Dave Michaels did not spin Felix out. Felix did not have motor problems. He was just tight in the corner, lifted a little too early, and Dave Michaels spun him out. Not on purpose. It was Felix's fault. So that part of the story was true.
Just going back to the Dave Michael interview, he actually had a really cool idea. He messaged me right after we did the show. He said, Scott, I can send you pictures of all these race cars we talked about and even some of the boats we talked about. And he was wanting us to post the pictures on RPM podcast so like people can kind of follow along with the interview and look at the pictures at the same time on the podcast. But unfortunately, he got busy. He never sent me the pictures, so that never happened. I just thought that was a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, no, that would be neat.
I did post a picture on today on my Instagram for the reason because Dave talked about that car that Tom bought from who was it? Will Cagle?
No, Dutch Hogue.
Dutch Hogue. It was all white with pink. I actually found a picture of it.
Albino?
I posted a picture of it on my Instagram today.
Yeah, I saw that at New Regent Speedway. I think in the picture was Ray Abraham too.
Yeah.
All right, guys, you want to do whatever you learned, or is it too late for that?
No, it's never too late. Let's start with Tim. What did you learn today?
I learned a lot about Doug Wolcott and stuff I never even knew about. So nothing funny or like you would say, but yeah, just good interview. Great interview.
Okay, Scott, what'd you learn?
I learned we went 3 hours.
Okay. Now, Doug was talking about, he's tall, so he had trouble fitting into some of the cars. So I learned that Doug Wolcott doesn't like small packages. I learned that you had to be a real man to drive a modified in the mid-'70s. I learned that there's a throwback horse race, of all things. I don't even know where to start on that. And I also learned that Doug wants to see Tim Richmond, Rusty Wallace, and Dale Sr. banging each other.
I also learned that whenever we ask that food question, New Regent Speedway.
I was just going to say that. The people are always going, whoever runs the concession stand at New Regent Speedway now is missing the boat on not having some kind of special meatball sandwich there.
And she should call Mrs. Garback's meatball
Yeah.
sandwich. Too.
Call them old-fashioned New Egypt Speedway, or whatever.
All right, guys. Well, that finally wraps up episode 172 of the RPM podcast, and thanks for listening.
We'll
Stay
see you
safe,
next
everyone.
week.
Wash your hands.